Felon Hamburglar denounced a prison system he called robble as he testified before the Senate subcommittee on penal reform. Hamburglar, convicted in 1998 of breaking and entering a McDonald's hamburger franchise in South Beloit, Wisconsin, and currently serving a sentence of 3 to 5 years, made this impassioned plea before being interrupted by U.S. Senator Bob Smith of Rhode Island.
Certainly there is room for improvement in our prison system, but I would hardly call the current situation robble.
After delivering his message to the subcommittee, Hamburglar was promptly placed in chains and returned to prison to serve out the remainder of his sentence in solitary confinement. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call in to get in on the conversation with us. That's 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Joa,
and Jay Noon.
And tonight we have a lot of different stuff to talk about from all over the world. I have a bunch of stories that are from about different countries. But I wanted to start off this one that's about free speech and how there isn't any such thing in Russia because we're equal opportunity government haters here, and I don't like the government of Russia any more than I like the government of Ukraine or the United States or Israel.
They're all bad.
They're all bad. And I wanted to talk about this woman who's looking at 8 years in jail for a protest she did that was an anti-war protest in Russia. It says, Russian artist who staged an anti-war supermarket protest faces 8 years in jail. It says, a female artist who staged a protest against Moscow's war in Ukraine by replacing supermarket price tags with trenchant calls to stop the conflict is facing 8 years in a penal colony after a court hearing on Wednesday. Do you guys know what penal colony means?
Well, from like movies and stuff, it's basically like this place that, is a few acres and it's surrounded by like, a 20-foot razor wire fence and guards, and pretty much you're just kind of in like a general population with a bunch of people.
That's basically what it says here when I went to
for stickers. So
what?
She put stickers on?
Well, she changed the price tags to say something. Not sure what they are yet.
I mean, at best, it's maybe vandalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not. See, vandalism would mean that it's not easily removable, right?
Yeah, because like chalking a sidewalk isn't vandalism.
Right.
Well, I think this has nothing to do with that. It's just, talking bad about the war is illegal there.
Yep.
There's just not free speech there.
She also did do it on like private property, right? So this is like a store. It's private property, private, establishment. She probably should have chose something that was more government oriented to protest on.
Even then, who knows if their laws protect speech on government property either.
True.
It says Alexandra Skochilenko, 33, an artist and musician known to her friends as Sasha, carried out the protest on March 31st, 2022. Whoa, that was forever ago, but you're just now hearing about it. She's probably just been held this whole time. I don't know. Replacing price tags in a supermarket in St. Petersburg, Russia's second city, with 5 little pieces of paper urging to an end to what Moscow calls a special military operation. This says, it's November 8th, 2023. I was making sure it wasn't like something old that popped up on antiwar.com. So yeah, maybe she's just been held there this whole time. And I don't know what it means by Russia's second city unless it means second largest.
Okay, yeah.
It says Alexander Gladyshev, A state prosecutor on Wednesday asked a judge in St. Petersburg to jail her for 8 years and ban her from using the internet for 3 years, according to a statement from St. Petersburg's
She wasn't
courts.
using the internet when she did this.
Yeah, I wonder why that hasn't even to do with it.
Because the internet is how people communicate, and they obviously, so the prosecutors are like the prosecutors here in the States. It's all government's bad, it's like you guys said. And so these prosecutors don't care about morality or what's right or wrong or, if there's a victim or if there's an injured party. They just care about getting, prosecuting cases because that's how they climb up the corporate ladder. That's how they get more money. And actually, another thing that's happening here is with these prosecutors, or why they're so aggressive on their prosecution of just anybody, especially like here in the States, for whatever possible reason they can, is because there's certain like federal incentives. So like the child endangerment statute here in New Hampshire. And I'm actually trying to figure out sort of how I can present this to, say, a jury or to somebody, even the state legislature. There was a newspaper article I read where a woman was charged with child welfare endangerment because she left her 3 kids in the car while the car was running, air conditioning on. So it was like a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 9-year-old all left in the car, and a 2-year-old, 4-year-old in their car seats, and the 9-year-old just there hanging out. And when I was 9 years old, I was left with my younger brothers all the time.
I was too. I was thinking the same thing. I was left with my younger brother and sister, and I'd be 9, and we'd be in the parking lot. My parents would be in like Walmart, or my mom would be in like Walmart or whatever, and they would just be like, I'm not taking you guys in. You guys have been bad today, so wait here. And It was fine.
So anyways, in this newspaper article that I had come across, searching this stuff, they said, and this was Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where it happened. They said that the federal government gives basically money to enforce these types of laws, like the child welfare endangerment law was somehow given a subsidy from the government. So I know that some of these subsidies that come to was like, for example, one that comes directly out of the Social Security fund and goes into the judicial pension fund at a state level is when family court awards child support. 66% of that child support, whatever, say the child support's $1,000 a week a dad has to pay, and that's not unheard of. There more $1,000 a month, but let's say it's $1,000. $660 comes then from the Social Security Administration every month or every time this child support is done, and goes directly into the judicial pension fund for whichever state the judge is doing that. So this other money that is the federal government's giving, and this is from like the Child Safe Act that was done in like 97 with the Clintons. And Hillary Clinton was, is quoted as being very proud of her Child Safe Act, which gives all kinds of money from the Social Security fund to the states via Child Protection Services. Well, this child welfare endangerment statute, the newspaper article said that it was basically federal money. So I don't know where the federal money goes. Does it go to the police department? Does it go to the police officer's pension? Does it go to the judicial pension fund? Does it go to the judiciary? Does it go to the general fund of the state? Because all of that is an incentive that creates this, conflict of interest, in these courts with these cops and these lawyers. And let's not forget, the prosecutor draws from the judicial pension fund. The judge draws from the judicial pension fund, when they retire, and they want that thing to be valuable. And and same thing with all the social workers, they all draw from like some state pension fund. And this is why that there's a class at Granite State University that essentially teaches DCYF social workers how to maximize revenue for DCYF.
Wow.
I can't remember what the class is called off the top of my head, but
Child safety protection class.
Well, yeah, it's basically how to maximize revenue for DCYF by getting all of these federal incentives and doing these assessments and like taking kids. So each time that like they do an assessment where they go in and like interview a child, they get like almost $6,000 or right around $6,000 from the federal government goes into the DCYF fund. I'm pretty sure some of that goes into their pensions. In fact, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and she was talking about how infrastructure is so horrible, and there's basically no money left over for any infrastructure when the taxes are collected, because such a huge portion of your taxes that are collected first go to pay off pensions.
Like pensions or just any government worker?
Government and worker pensions. So the pensions are serviced first. And what we got to understand is a lot of these pension agreements and pension funds, which just because you're a landowner doesn't mean you're responsible for the pension of state employees, but yet you're paying all these taxes. But these pension funds, a lot of them are guaranteed to like mature at like 3%, 4%. I forget what city it is, but there is a couple of major cities. It might be Manchester and or Concord, but I could be wrong.
Is that adjusted for inflation?
No, it's just a guaranteed return of 8% to the pension. And if the pension doesn't make the 8%, for example, or whatever the guaranteed return, let's say 8%, because there's a couple of cities that use 8%, which is a huge number, because that's hundreds of millions of dollars, these pension funds. And what happens is the taxpayers must pony up the percentage that it doesn't make over 8%. So if the pension fund only matures 2%, then the taxpayers got to kick in a 6% on top of all of this pension fund they're funding already, because they have all these employees working for them. So the idea is these government agencies have to constantly grow. This is one of the elements of this, maximizing revenue, because all of these state employees, and my aunt, who's worked for the state of Massachusetts for years, Department of Education, told me the same exact thing. These state employees all understand in order for their pension to be worthwhile and for them to collect a pension, they need to basically, for when they retire, they need to have 4 or 5 people replacing them. So because it's a pyramid scheme, this pension fund. Yeah. And so what happens is these pensions become so much of the actual tax base, there's no money left over for fixing roads and bridges and infrastructure and, things that like most people think that their taxes are paying for. It's kind of like donating to like, some Feed the Children in Africa, nonprofit that, the CEO makes like several $100,000 a year. And, you donate $10 to Sally Struthers or whoever. You remember those commercials? And, and 10 cents gets to the, the kid starving to death in Africa, or 1 cent does out of the $10. It's kind of the same things happening with government, because most of the money is going towards pension funds that are guaranteed to go up, that the taxpayers have to fund. And let's not forget, who operates government pension funds? Most likely in the financial world, from what I understand, a bunch of rookies out of college. Yeah. A bunch of people who don't know what they're doing. A rookie?
Well, yeah. Why are people out of college running the pension fund? Because
that's how they get their first job usually, is running a government pension fund, because just like everyone else in government, it's they essentially have a government job because they're basically lack confidence, or they're virtually have no skills, or they're useless in the real marketplace.
They like
for the most part.
They like welfare.
Yeah. But it's the same thing with any government employee is usually in that particular industry is the lowest of the low when it comes to like production, intelligence, and like, or well, not so much. You can be smart and lazy, but generally most government actors are there because they're lazy. They want an easy paycheck, that golden parachute retirement fund and whatnot.
And if you've ever dealt with a government worker, like you have to get something done and you have to go through the government to do it, you will immediately find out that they're lazy. They're not interested in helping you or getting anything done quickly. Oh my God, when I lived on a military base.
Like the DMV?
Yep, they're bad.
So
they can get worse, though.
The same type of people are essentially, from what I understand, running the government pension funds. And this was just something that was told to me by a good friend of mine who majored in finance, and right now he's operating an excavator. As a construction worker, making about $5,000 a week. He goes and works these union jobs like 80 hours a week, and he makes a lot of money. But he went to school for financial, and he started like working in one of these financial institutions in New York City in like 2007 or 8, and it was like right before it all fell apart. And he's like, "This is a scam. I can't do this." But one of the first gigs that he got was working basically for a pension fund that managed like a New York City pension fund. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and he was the one who told me, is like, yeah, there's so much money getting dumped into these pension funds, are like black holes, and a lot of them are just losing, but because the taxpayers are essentially held at gunpoint, because if you don't pay taxes, men with guns show up and they'll shoot you.
I feel like a lot of times. When it comes to not just the cops, but like in general, government employees, they tend to retire right when they're being investigated too. So like they don't get, there's no consequences. So you'll see, investigated for this. Oh, former officer. It's always former officer. It's like he had time to retire, so he collects his pension.
Same thing with a lot of these like CEOs and executives in like big major corporations like Enron, for example. So many people lost their entire life savings because of the Enron debacle. And pretty much everybody that was involved in stealing all those people's money in Enron, they all got they were like, yeah, I quit. And they get like a $10 million severance package, and they've been making like multiple $1 million per year. And they're like, oh, I resign. I'm no longer part of that. So and they're like, nobody goes after them. Nobody stays after school for detention. Nobody goes to jail. Nobody gets a fine against them. And these guys just walk away scot-free. And you're going to see this if we like in 2008. This happened with a whole bunch of the banks. They all got bailed out. Like it was like almost $1 trillion. It was like $800 and something billion. It was TARP, which was tarnished asset. I can't remember what the TARP acronym for, but this was like a Bush Obama thing. Bush was going out, Obama was coming in, and the amount of money that the banks got in bailouts could have literally paid off every single homeowner's mortgage in the country. Wow. And like nobody's mortgage got paid off. Nobody got any help. Just the banks got all of this money injected into them. And the people, the higher ups in the bank, all these executives got all kinds of bonuses, and they just left.
Of course they did.
The Big Short kind of talks about that a little bit, but yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying, though. It's just basically these prosecutors have incentives to go after people way harder than you would even think that they would need to. And it always seems like they really are doing performatively bad and evil things in order to get somebody convicted of things.
Yep.
In the United States, at least, and I'm pretty sure it's just as bad
make
elsewhere.
Good people examples, and the bad people is typically them or their friends. So they kind of brush that stuff under the rug.
And if there is incentives for them to prosecute specific crimes, it would totally make sense to me. Like, oh, we're going to have more money put into our pension the more of these specific crimes we prosecute.
Or the more children we take and put in foster care, the more parents we investigate. And now if we do more and more, now we can say, hey, we need to hire more people. And when you hire more people, it furthermore funds all these pensions. Same thing with the teachers. They got less kids in school now in New Hampshire, but yet they hire more teachers still.
Wow.
I kind of want to hire, a company, private companies that actually do the job, and then we'd be more likely to pay them again. Like, teachers are failing, so the government gives them more money.
And gives more of them jobs. But maybe it's the same thing in Russia with this person. It says the prosecution had previously accused her of committing what it described as a serious crime out of political hatred towards the Russian Federation. And see, like, they kind of have to skirt around that kind of thing in the United States. They have to just be like, well, listen, you're free to believe that, and then they, like, try to make libertarians or people who don't agree with the United States government look bad in different ways. But in Russia, they can just straight up say, look, she hates the Russian Federation, and that's basically exactly why she needs to be found guilty of this crime, which is pretty crazy.
Just look at her.
And
guilty.
It's just like, in my opinion, well, maybe I did think maybe they don't want her to go on the internet because she could incite people to be against the war.
What, is she going to change the prices on Amazon?
Yeah. It says Skochilenko, who denies the charge, was detained on April 11th, 2022 after a shopper complained about her action. Wow, so she was narked on too.
Wow.
She is being tried on the charge of knowingly spreading fake information about the Russian army, an offense punishable in her case by up to 10 years, but which can sometimes lead to a 15-year jail term. Wow.
What?
So the prosecution isn't even asking for the full term. But still, she might get the same amount of time Ian got for, the crap that they sent Ian to prison.
Yeah, but she just talked trash about the military and they sent her to jail?
I do really want to know what was written on the price tags, but it doesn't surprise me at all that that's against the law in Russia.
Like, literally in the United States, we have this, I forget the exact case, off the top of United States versus Mims or something like that. Whereas I can't say it on the air, which is ironic because the Supreme Court ruled this that F the draft.
Oh,
You can't wear a shirt that says F the draft.
Wow.
Where?
Huh?
Where can't you wear it?
In court?
Oh.
Wait, so...
Well, actually, I think that came up a second time. So, like, I think he was on campus. The guy was holding a sign that said F the draft on campus.
So did he write
arrested.
EEF or the 4 letters of that curse word?
Yeah, the four letters of the curse word.
So, you're saying that the Supreme Court ruled that was constitutional, that he got in trouble for that?
Yeah.
So then it's not ironic. I mean, that we can't say it on the air.
No. They found it constitutional that he could say. They could say, but I think it's ironic because like what is the FCC is regulating this airwaves in the sense that we can't say it,
That would
even though
make it
Supreme
ironic.
Court ruled that this is a justified thing to say.
Yep, and I think that's messed up. Like, the thing is, I probably wouldn't really cuss on the air anyway if I was allowed to, but I just don't because it's going to get us kicked off radio station.
Right, but that's my point. But like, if I just found like if I said the full F the draft, if I said that fully out loud on the air right now and we got fined,
Yeah.
I would bring the Supreme Court ruling into play saying we're not paying this fine.
Well, unfortunately, they wouldn't fine us, so you wouldn't be able to do that at all. They'd fine the radio stations.
Yeah,
that
and then
are
it's just
playing us.
aggravation for,
and
the
they just
syndicate station.
Kick us off.
That's terrible.
It says this woman, she's being charged on the charge of knowingly spreading fake information about the Russian army. I already read that. Russia tightened its laws on dissent soon after sending its troops into Ukraine on February 24th last year, deepening a crackdown on critics whom Moscow sees as unacceptably divisive at a time when the country is locked in what President Vladimir Putin has cast as an existential struggle with the West. Wow. And I lost it. Okay, Amnesty International has declared Skochilenko a prisoner of conscience, someone who has not used or advocated violence or hatred and is imprisoned solely because of who they are or what they believe.
Also known as political prisoner. Right.
And it's also just not fair because they're saying that she did this out of hatred towards the Russian Federation, and that is thought crime. You can't decide that someone hates the Russian Federation. I mean, I guess she might have written I hate the Russian Federation or whatever on the price tags, but I do want to figure out what she said. It says, the artist smiled from a courtroom cage. Whoa, they get left in cages in the courtroom. On Wednesday, as she listened to proceedings, despite the prospect of facing a lengthy stint behind bars. She's probably lesbian, like, only reason you wouldn't care. I could not go to jail and be with, like, all women all the time. That'd be terrible. Just, like, the worst kind of women as well. It's not like I hate women, but I don't want to see nothing but terrible women all day. It says, copies of the... Like, I'm just saying I wouldn't be smiling if they were talking about putting me in there for 8 years. Copies of the imitation price tags, which got her into trouble in the first place, remain on display on a website maintained by her supporters lobbying for her to be freed. It might have something to do with them asking for her to be taken off the internet.
I don't know how you could do that.
603-283-6160. Call in with your thoughts and opinions. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has agreed to a daily 4-hour humanitarian pause in northern Gaza. The White House announced the move on Thursday, saying these pauses would begin immediately. It comes after weeks of fighting, which has left more than 10,000 people dead in Gaza, according to Hamas. Some 1,400 Israelis were killed and more than 200 taken hostage after a terror attack by the militant group on October 7th. Our US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby confirmed there will be no military operations in northern Gaza over the duration of the daily pauses. They will allow assistance to enter the region and provide a window for citizens to get out of harm's way. But the US says a ceasefire is still not on the cards, claiming it would legitimize the October 7th attacks. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire until the hostages are released.
For many nations, these pauses don't go far enough. French President Emmanuel Macron has broken ranks by urging states to strive for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Rebecca Bunden is in Paris.
French President Macron said that the situation in Gaza is getting worse each day. His opening remarks were at the conference called for humanitarian aid for Gaza on the sidelines of the Paris Peace Forum. The conference brought together states, international organisations and NGOs that are active on the ground, with the aim of helping to mobilise aid, as concerns persist about basics including water and medical supplies reaching civilians in Gaza amid the conflict. Notably, representatives from Israel did not attend the event.
Meanwhile, the European Union's pushed back against US and Israeli calls to sanction Hamas. Alex Kadia has more from Brussels.
Sanctioning Hamas is not central to finding a solution to the violence in the Middle East. That is the view expressed by Portugal's foreign minister, echoed by other European diplomats who say getting an EU-wide consensus on sanctions would be too difficult to nail down. US officials have said they want their EU counterparts to move faster against Hamas, and Israel's ambassador to Brussels is also doubling down, saying that the EU's current restrictions aren't being applied and that only new forceful sanctions can plug that gap.
And Germany's leader says he's ashamed and outraged at a recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents. From Berlin, here's Trent Murray.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz addressed members of the Jewish community to mark 85 years since the Night of the Broken Glass, when Nazi forces launched a wave of attacks against Jewish citizens. Almost 240 synagogues were burned, more than 7,000 Jewish-owned businesses destroyed, and 30,000 Jewish men rounded up and placed into concentration camps. He said more work needed to be done to teach young people and immigrant communities about the horrors of the past, as he condemned how anti-Semitism is creeping into conversations about the current conflict in the Middle East.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, it's talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call to get in on the conversation with us. Anyone can get on Free Talk Live and talk about whatever they want, except Skeeter from California. 603-283-6160, and with you in the studio tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Joa,
and Jay.
And I wanted to tell you that this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash, Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands, including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. And what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send you dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. And thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn more about Dash. That's dash.org. So moving on here, we have this story from, I don't even think I said, it's usnews.com, about this Russian artist who put these stickers, well, I guess they're pieces of paper, we haven't really heard exactly what they say or what they are, into where they have the price tags on things at a grocery store in Russia. And this was back in March of 2022, and she's been held this whole time. And she's facing 8 years now just for the crime of disseminating what they call
disagreeing.
Yeah, misinformation in Russia. And I think it's really messed up. I mean, it's obviously free speech. Not that they have any free speech laws there.
I feel like just their logic of spending money on putting her away, and it's just, do they really need to do that?
Well,
it's just such a waste.
If you want to build your pension, like I said, the prosecutors, they all have a financial incentive.
I
also
guess.
to make an
Have people
example
in
of
prison?
people, they, a lot of these judges and prosecutors also invest in these, contract companies that supply to prisons with, like, the food, the toiletries, remove the trash,
sure.
the companies that provide the energy, the propane, the fuel, whatever, it takes to, and it takes more, it costs more to house a prisoner in most places than it does to send them to Harvard. Send someone to Harvard for a year.
Yeah.
So because it's very lucrative. Just and these same contractors are the same contractors who are also got the exclusive contracts to provide the hospitals with all their goods and things that they use and consumables. But disinformation, misinformation. I mean, the Biden administration has been all over this stuff for a long time now.
Yeah.
They had some lady, there was some wackadoo lady who, like, some kind of artist performer, libtard type that was the czar of, like, Office of Misinformation or Disinformation. There's all kinds of videos of her, like, singing and stuff. She's actually a pretty good singer, but and of course they're like, constantly talk about we need to combat misinformation. So then look what they did to Alex Jones.
Yep.
They got what, a half a trillion or $750 billion judgment against him for what they're claiming disinformation. They actually got a $52 million judgment against Eamon Bundy for because there was a kid that St. Luke's Hospital, which is some, like, children's hospital somewhere wherever, I think he's in Utah or Nevada, I'm not even sure, but they participated in doing a medical kidnapping of a child called Baby Cyrus, and they to adopt it right out to another family. And there's a really a well put together documentary called Save Baby Cyrus. It's not that old, but Eamon Bundy was really big about getting his following to
and he protested the hospital, right?
Well, they protested the hospital. I guess the hospital got all kinds of calls and emails and letters and how bad you are. So they go to some court and they just get a summary judgment against Eamon Bundy, just like this other summary judgment they just got against Trump, which is seems to be me like another wag the dog situation.
Is it another one about something he said that
they said that he misvalued the value of his properties, and they're trying to say, like, his properties are worth this really low amount, and they're ruling, the judge is, like, ruling that it's worth it, and the judge has, like, been public about being a Trump hater. That's on the case. I mean, this is one of these things too. When you're in front of a judge, like, somebody needs to certify first off that this judge is actually like a he is impartial.
Yeah.
So that means he doesn't vote if he's impartial. He's not a registered Republican. He's not a registered Democrat. If he takes a vaccine and wears a mask, he's not impartial. And if he and then there, like the Trump and the judge in the Trump situation there is publicly quoted as saying bad, negative things. Actually dislikes Trump.
When I hear things like that, I'm just like, are all lawyers just this incompetent and stupid,
Yes,
or are
absolutely.
they like in cahoots? Because you would think
Yes,
his lawyer would
in cahoots.
They're evil.
Yeah. You would think that his lawyer would be able to get this judge thrown out. Like, look, he's clearly not impartial because he has openly said he hates my client. So let's get him thrown out.
For sure, a lawyer goes in their head, like, all right, if I don't do what my client says, will I make more money? Okay, we'll do that. That's what's in their head. They don't care.
Even this whole culture of everybody's relying on lawyers. Like, I actually just listened to a thing, Rob from Vermont, who calls in often, sent me a link today to a YouTube video of the New Hampshire House Family Law Committee. And this guy who's in the Family Law Committee, he introduces how, we've gotten all these reports of these judges who control so much just on the fact that they can kick out any evidence they want. So what the New Hampshire House of Representatives is some people introduced a bill they've introduced a bill to reword the child endangerment law, which is going to be interesting because I think that's how we're going to find out. So the child endangerment law, best I can tell, is worded vaguely because I just read a little thing that, like, under some United States code, this federal, child endangerment law, it's basically the state one is worded the same way, and I'm pretty sure that's how they're getting the financial funding is by, just like, for example, states get a big subsidy from the federal government for having a seatbelt law, and they also get money from departments in Massachusetts, get money from the state and the feds, from what I understand, for enforcing seatbelt laws and writing these seatbelt law tickets.
Sure.
But also, with so the legislature is looking to basically add to the child and welfare endangerment charge that it resulted that some injury happened, some damage happened. Somebody was injured. The baby was injured or something.
Yeah. Because right now it basically just says you can get charged with child endangerment without the child ever having actually been in danger.
Right. So, like, for example, there are Amish people who have had their children taken away for letting the kids, be in the fields with them, working alongside the horses.
Come on.
There are, upstate New York. There is multiple cases where for doing, like, common farm and, like, rural activities, children have been taken away. There's a case that I found where a grandpa was watching his grandson and riding lawnmower, just mowing the yard. Somebody reported, cops came, they took the baby. I believe some southern state this was, Georgia maybe. But actually, you could YouTube search that, like, for, like, doing, like, work and stuff and, like, farming things. There's all kinds of and there are kids that are taken away because parents don't want to vaccinate them.
Well, yeah.
That's happened too.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, this child endangerment thing, the way it's written is so vague that the legislature, is actually looking at, and it was Leah Cushman who introduced this particular bill to essentially reword this. Now, what's going to probably happen is we're going to find out that whatever this federal incentive is probably not going to qualify now for this particular change. Well, your parasite type, legislatures who really want this, money, coming into the state, because there are a lot of legislatures both on the right and on the left at a state level that all they care is about the state getting more money because they have this, like, belief
and
that
no
the state,
consequence in it.
Right.
Or maybe they actually this is their second job, or this isn't like they already they're going to get pensions because they're retired from some government job and then they became a state rep.
Sure.
Yeah,
so.
like all the school teachers who are depending on that pension that are claiming they don't make them enough money, and based what I can see, the salary of a school teacher is, like, not that great. And but this is why they really push hard on, like, building up the base more all the time. So
you make a good point there, Bonnie, is that I feel like a lot of these state reps have only run for office to secure their own futures, like in the pension process and maybe, their friends and family and whatever generational, theft that they're doing with their kids doing the same job they were doing and all that jazz.
Yep.
But I feel like if you were, imagine if you held a government position, you were never allowed to run for office. That's it.
Right. Yeah. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, if you're taking, welfare of any form, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. If you are working if there's any conflict of interest, if you work for the government, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. Right. If you there needs to be, like, the people government jobs need to be like for the kind of people that are like, oh man, I can't get a job anywhere else, so I guess I'll take this job. But what's become the career choice for a lot of people right out of school, and the schools are all pushing this, is to go right into government.
Yeah.
You know, go be a teacher. You know, go get your doctorate, and you can teach art and get paid $100,000 a year in Massachusetts, because it doesn't matter, you know, what what your actual skills are and what you're able to produce and do. It all they care about is how stacked your resume is. Basically,
It's like, do you not like people? Here, work for the DMV.
Right.
I feel like the DMV, like, that's always the thing that people give as a example, and they're just absolutely nothing compared to the people I had to deal with that aren't military people, but they work on military bases and they're government contractors.
Kind of like the dispatchers in most police departments.
They're terrible too.
They're like,
Tenfer.
they're like, oh, I have this position of authority and I'm going to wield all this power. And the reason that they can't be a cop is because they're too psycho.
Yeah.
There was a guy in Palmer years ago.
Their IQ's too high.
Yeah, he was a dispatcher because he was just. And he was a cop years ago, but like he did some like kind of crazy stuff that sort of got him like removed from being a cop. But he was a dispatcher, and this guy was like, they ended up having to fire him, but he was like out of control. He'd like yell and scream at people.
Wow.
And it got to the point to where he was like so horrible that like the cops like wanted him gone.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to a dispatcher, you have to be very accurate because the cops will be showing up on scene to completely different than what the dispatcher said was happening.
So that part of the job, the guy was actually really good at.
Oh, okay.
But like when I go in there and ask him for some documents, like start handing these guys public records requests, and the dispatcher, I mean, he just wanted to pick a fight with me because he was just,
stupid.
you know, because he just didn't like what I was doing, you know.
Yeah, I just want to say that dispatchers sometimes will believe whatever the caller is saying. So it puts police in a bad position when they show up. Like, they say this guy had a gun. Well, they said that, but did it actually happen?
You could probably relay this story pretty good about Press NH. The dispatcher said some false stuff that like almost could have got him killed.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the one with the...
When he was in Hillsborough
Yeah.
and he was going to get his kid and there was some kind of restraining order and the dispatcher is telling the cop that this guy's got a restraining order out for him.
An active restraining order. It had been closed off because of, like, the judge has decided, okay, it doesn't need to be active anymore. But that's exactly the thing that popped in my head too. The order was no longer valid, but the dispatcher told the cop it was, and he was driving around with the lady who was the subject of she had gotten the restraining order against him before, but then they like made up, went to therapy and stuff like that, and it had been turned it had been stopped. It wasn't in action anymore, but for whatever reason, the dispatcher said that they still have I don't know how they had this wrong information, but they said the wrong information to the cop, and the cop was getting really argumentative with him, like, you know.
Or like it just happened the other day, where he was looking in vehicles at I forget where the government facility was of sorts.
Like in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and they called into the police and said that he was trying to break into vehicles. That's not what he was doing. He was looking in vehicles. They're going to claim that he was breaking into vehicles. Now the cops going to be rushing there and they're going to be like, you know, wanting to quickly arrest somebody. You know, go hands on immediately. When you say stuff like that, you know, you got to be careful what you say.
Yep, and I mean, it's not like they're ever going to get any kind of consequences for doing that, so what do they care? Well, moving on, we're talking about this story about a Russian artist who, in March of 2022, put up some kind of stickers over the price tags, or we don't even know if they're stickers or just piece of paper, in a grocery store, allegedly. And they were saying that they didn't want the war going on that started in February of 2022. So this segment gets into what the price tag says. It says, copies of the imitation price tags, which got her into trouble in the first place, remain on display on a website maintained by her supporters, lobbying for her to be freed. So at least her supporters are claiming these are what they said. Apparently she denies the whole thing, but One of the
That's kind of funny. So the
Right.
supporters say she did it.
maybe.
Well, I mean, you could have these, agent provocateur supporters.
Right.
That's not
True.
hard to do, and especially if it's a website, I'm sure there's like an AI program for that by the deep state, to make this happen, or an algorithmic thing,
But
Yep.
if she did do it, I mean, I wouldn't admit it.
Yeah,
I'd let-
exactly.
You know.
She might have just done it and isn't admitting it, but it says one of the tags accused the Russian army of bombing a theater in the port city of Mariupol, where around 400 people were hiding. A charge Moscow said at the time was false. Another alleged that Russia was sending conscripts, so people who were conscripted, so people who were subject of the draft.
forced into service.
Yep. Conscripts to fight in Ukraine, something it has denied. A third cited Russian casualty figures and accused state TV of not talking about them, which I would believe too. And a fourth accused Russian President Putin of lying and spoke of pointless deaths. A fifth tag read, "My great-grandfather did not take place in the Great Patriotic War, World War II, for 4 years in order for Russia to become a fascist state and attack Ukraine." The Kremlin has said Ukraine's leadership, not it, is the one with fascist tendencies. It's like both of them. Look at the law you're enforcing. And has said Russia was forced to send troops into Ukraine to protect Russian speakers there and stop the creeping expansion of the NATO military alliance, saying this threatened Russia's national security.
Which I agree with.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I don't think you're ever forced into killing innocent people.
Well, so what's been going on since 2014, Ukraine, which is, since it's been like sort of overtaken by Western, influence, Western money, get a lot of U.S. and European, or a lot of U.S. and NATO munitions and bombs. They've been shelling this, what's called the Luhansk and Donbass region.
Right. And what's shelling?
And shelling is where they shoot these like surface to surface missiles essentially. And like, so a shell would, if a shell hit this house, it would totally level it. It's a munition that they basically drop it in a thing like a pipe. It just drops, and then it's going to charge in the backside of it. When it hits, it goes up in the air, and they kind of just point this thing, at a certain spot, and they can set, and depending on on the angle you point it and the direction you point it, it'll go so far away depending on wind. And they can be like sort of accurate, but they can be moved around a lot. So basically they're just kind of like shooting in the dark, sort of. And then when they hit, they have another like charge cap on the front of them. They explode. And some of these things, like are 30, 40, 50 pounds of, some kind of explosive in them. Silver Dave could explain it a lot better. Silver Dave said that these things would all the time, they were like, thousands of dollars per round. The device, the rocket launcher thing that that they drop them in, they call them mortar rounds, also, but mortar shells. So the Ukrainians are just shelling this region of Russia. They're going in there and they're harassing people.
It's technically Ukraine, right? But these people they voted to be part of Russia.
Yep.
They speak Russian and they consider themselves Russian. Yep. And that's for some reason why the government in Kiev has been shelling them.
Right. Wow. And so they've been doing this. So like Russia, the whole idea that Russia unprovokedly attacked Ukraine is 100% BS. It is just, it's just media narrative, this, that's happening. And So for, since 2014, Ukraine's been, basically bombing these people. And finally, they're like, we want to be part of Russia. We want to be part of Russia. And Russia kind of like came to their help. And then, of course, the United States and all the Western nations have just piled right in to like launder money like crazy. And they also needed to get a whole bunch of munitions and weapons and arms and tanks and Humvees and 4x4 trucks and, stuff to future enemies. So like so I'm sure the Palestinians are getting a bunch of their stuff kind of slipped through this, and I'm sure other countries have gotten these munitions that have been sent to Ukraine and
it's kind of a suspicious spot geographically because you can easily get things from like Europe into the Middle East there.
It is a really like big trading spot.
Ports and
Yeah, I think this generally this area is big because it connects Mediterranean with the Indian Ocean. You know, it's a really strategically key spot for all these oil pipelines and everything like that. Just trade. It connects the world right there.
And also you have the so Zelensky, he's referred to as a Nazi by some people, and he basically
he is.
Definitely supports the Azov
or something.
Azov battalion, who those guys are like openly Nazis. They're like into they're very like homophobic, if like you better not be gay in Ukraine, you're going to have some serious issues because you essentially get put in prison or killed for being gay there, from what I understand.
Wow.
But the media don't talk about that because the narrative machine that is trying to push the gay an extremist gay agenda, but they're still supporting a nation where it's illegal essentially to be gay,
and they're acting like it's all about freedom.
Yeah, this whole join or die is just terrible in Ukraine. Like, no, I'm not going to join your fascist regime. I would rather die.
Well,
so what's the guy there in Ukraine?
Zelensky.
Zelensky is reported he's begging for loans now because now all the focus is on Palestine and Israel.
I keep seeing headlines that he is upset that people are war fatigued and the United States needs to continue giving him money in the West.
Yeah, he must be jelly of Israel.
I hope he burns in hell.
Right. We should go to your phone calls and thoughts. Tim in Florida, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, I actually called to follow up on a topic last night, but I actually just wanted to mention I do not have a source for it, and I can't remember where I heard it, but I believe that Zelensky is actually putting together plans for peace settlement, peace talks.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, the money laundering's done, so that's all that's all that's left.
And the huge amount of support and interest isn't there anymore because of Israel is probably
and the whole world is aware of the sham too. Like I mean, I'm a farmer and I'm aware of this stuff. How come all the politicians that are supposedly paying attention to this keep on wanting to give them money? Well, because they're all crooked. Because they are all crooked, and we all know it.
And I mean, even before this war, Ukraine was known as like one of the most corrupt governments and countries in the world.
And the most child trafficking happens in Ukraine. Mel Gibson blows this out of the water. If you internet search Mel Gibson and Ukraine child trafficking, it's crazy what he talks about.
Zelensky denies wanting to go into peace, by the way.
603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has agreed to a daily 4-hour humanitarian pause in northern Gaza. The White House announced the move on Thursday, saying these pauses would begin immediately. It comes after weeks of fighting, which has left more than 10,000 people dead in Gaza, according to Hamas. Some 1,400 Israelis were killed and more than 200 taken hostage after a terror attack by the militant group on October 7th. Our US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby confirmed there will be no military operations in northern Gaza over the duration of the daily pauses. They will allow assistance to enter the region and provide a window for citizens to get out of harm's way. But the US says a ceasefire is still not on the cards, claiming it would legitimize the October 7th attacks. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire until the hostages are released.
For many nations, these pauses don't go far enough. French President Emmanuel Macron has broken ranks by urging states to strive for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Rebecca Bunden is in Paris.
French President Macron said that the situation in Gaza is getting worse each day. His opening remarks were at the conference called for humanitarian aid for Gaza on the sidelines of the Paris Peace Forum. The conference brought together states, international organisations and NGOs that are active on the ground, with the aim of helping to mobilise aid, as concerns persist about basics including water and medical supplies reaching civilians in Gaza amid the conflict. Notably, representatives from Israel did not attend the event.
Meanwhile, the European Union's pushed back against US and Israeli calls to sanction Hamas. Alex Kadia has more from Brussels.
Sanctioning Hamas is not central to finding a solution to the violence in the Middle East. That is the view expressed by Portugal's foreign minister, echoed by other European diplomats who say getting an EU-wide consensus on sanctions would be too difficult to nail down. US officials have said they want their EU counterparts to move faster against Hamas, and Israel's ambassador to Brussels is also doubling down, saying that the EU's current restrictions aren't being applied and that only new forceful sanctions can plug that gap.
And Germany's leader says he's ashamed and outraged at a recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents. From Berlin, here's Trent Murray.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz addressed members of the Jewish community to mark 85 years since the Night of the Broken Glass, when Nazi forces launched a wave of attacks against Jewish citizens. Almost 240 synagogues were burned, more than 7,000 Jewish-owned businesses destroyed, and 30,000 Jewish men rounded up and placed into concentration camps. He said more work needed to be done to teach young people and immigrant communities about the horrors of the past, as he condemned how anti-Semitism is creeping into conversations about the current conflict in the Middle East.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the latest warning by the United Nations that it is now virtually certain that 2023 will be the world's hottest year on record. It follows the hottest ever October, September, August and July, which may have seen temperatures higher than at any point during the last 120,000 years.
Many of us are deeply surprised about how quickly it's warmed over the last few years.
Mark Maslin is a professor of Earth Systems Science at University College London.
What we're seeing is the result of decades of us putting huge amounts of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We're breaking weather records every single month, it seems. So as we're warming up, we're getting more extreme events. So the quicker we can cut our emissions, the quicker we can move from fossil fuels to sort of renewable energy, clean energy, the better it's going to be for the planet and also for us. We really do suffer both financially and livelihoods from these extreme weather events. So I'm hoping that in Dubai at COP28 in a month's time, perhaps the world leaders can start to accelerate their pledges and we can get to net zero a bit quicker.
That is going to be a very high bar to meet at COP28, which runs from November the 30th until December the 12th. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top stories again. Israel's agreed to a daily 4-hour humanitarian pause in northern Gaza. The White House announced the move on Thursday, saying these pauses would begin immediately. For many nations, they don't go far enough. French President Emmanuel Macron has broken ranks by urging states to strive for a ceasefire. Meanwhile, the European Union has pushed back against US and Israeli calls to sanction Hamas. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
The CEO of Dollar Tree unveils the long-rumored foil baking pan. A new donor liver complains about the difficulty of working with Lou Reed. And a local couple keeps their marriage together for the sake of no one. We'll keep this as quick and painless as possible. This is The Onion Week in Review. A study published this week in the Journal of Financial Economics found that 83% of gamblers quit right before they would have hit the big one. Researchers confirmed that roughly 8 out of 10 gamblers who walked away from slot machines, poker games, horse races, roulette, and other games were consistently just a single stake away from winning it all, and unknowingly gave up a lifetime of fortune by quitting prematurely.
Our study proved that subjects who closed an online poker session, walked away from a slot machine, or even gave up gambling altogether would have won millions of dollars in the next bet. Also, people who walk away after hitting it big are missing out on a chance to make more money. I mean, when you're hot, you're hot.
In other news, an Asian guy has a separate group of Asian friends, and a vain Galapagos tortoise tries to pass for 90.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Talk Live, welcome back. It's talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the number you can call to get in on the conversation with us, 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Joa,
and Jay.
And I'd like to thank Timothy Fanning, who is an amplifier with us. That means that they went to amps.freetalklive.com and became a supporter of ours, because AMPS stands for Amplify, Market, Promote, and Support. And they're giving us at least $5 a month, being a silver level amplifier and helping promote the show. So thank you so much, Timothy Fanning. And if you would like to learn more, you can go to amps.freetalklive.com to become an amplifier, and you'll get some perks and benefits for going through with that. amps.freetalklive.com. We do have Tim still on the phone. Tim, you had more for us. What was on your mind, Tim?
Yeah, so yesterday I called about this Auschwitz survivor who had made a comment on the behavior of the State of Israel, and I didn't know his name, and I think someone there tried to look it up. Maybe Nikki tried to look it up. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. His name is actually changed. Originally, he was born Hans Joachim Gustav Meyer, born August 12, 1924. At some point, he changed his name, and I do not know how to pronounce what he changed his name to, because it's spelled H-A-J-O. If it was a Spanish name, I would say Hejo Meyer. Yeah. But so the quote that I actually found, the quote, and he actually passed away in 2014. This was a quote from 2010. He wrote an article in the Huffington Post, May 25th, 2010, called An Ethical Tradition Betrayed. And he writes, I cannot help but hear echoes of the Nazi mythos of blood and soil and the rhetoric of settler fundamentalism, which claims a sacred right to all the lands of biblical Judea and Samaria. The various forms of collective punishment visited upon the Palestinian people coerced ghettoization behind a security wall, the bulldozing of homes and destruction of fields, the bombing of schools, mosques, and government buildings, an economic blockade that deprives people of water, food, medicine, education, and the basic necessities for dignified survival, forced me to recall the deprivations and humiliations that I experienced in my youth. And he actually was born in Germany, but then he was sent by his parents to the Netherlands, and he wrote a book in Dutch called, I can't pronounce it in Dutch. I could try, but there's an English translation on Amazon Prime. It's called The End of Judaism.
Interesting. Well, that's like really interesting. Maybe it's not about today's conflict exactly, but he was saying back in 2010 that Israel is acting to the people who live in Gaza just like Germany was acting to the Jews back when he was a kid.
He certainly was underestimating what, well, he was describing what they were doing at the time, and he like was calling for that stuff to stop. But what's happening now is just atrocious. Israel, I mean, I don't think we can really even express how horrible it is right there over there right now. Israel is just completely demolishing Gaza. Like, I'm talking every single standing building is being destroyed. It is disgusting.
Yeah, they're going to get rid of 100%. That's my prediction.
Yeah, that is
they
absolutely.
will get rid of 100%.
That's crazy. And it's just like, how does 1,000 people dying justify a complete genocide of 100% of people who live in Gaza? That's crazy.
Yeah, and actually about the 1,400 number, there's an article in The Gray Zone, and I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. Anybody can go there and look, but there's an article in thegrayzone.com where I don't know if I have it up right now, but it's basically about how after the initial attack, people in the concert were armed because there were Israeli settlers there, and we know what some of them do, and they had guns, and you had IDF members there with guns, and of course they responded. They got it. They went there to kidnap Hamas. Their directive was not to kill anyone, even though they did. They did kill people, but their directive was to capture. But of course, when you go to kidnap people that are armed, they're going to fight back. And then you're armed, and there's a firefight. And then they sent in, I guess, fighter jets and just started bombing according to what's called the Hannibal Directive. Look that one up.
The Hannibal? Hannibal?
Yeah.
Yep. If a hostage is taken, you kill the captor and the hostage.
Do you eat them
don't let
too?
the hostage live. That no.
Because it's Hannibal.
But,
okay.
So I think a good number. This is my opinion. I can't prove it, but based on testimony from people that were there, testimony from people in the IDF, which is in that article on the Gray Zone, that a lot of these Israeli houses were actually they were bombed by Israeli forces in order to kill the Hamas militants, but that was the prime objective.
So there was a lot of collateral damage because they were bombing, essentially this Shabbat in Israel, where that had been because there was
that's if it's an accident, but it's not an accident. You can't call it collateral damage if it's done on purpose.
I guess
that's true.
Yep.
But that's what they'll call it, That's really interesting you brought that up. So right here at the top of freedomsphoenix.com, the headline is, "They knew, participated. Photographers working for AP, CNN, New York Times, Reuters were embedded." Photographers were working for the APA, CNN, New York Times, and Reuters were embedded with Hamas on October 7th and accompanied the terrorist group into Israel. They knew the attack was coming and participated in accordance with an exclusive report at Honest Reporting. And this is a news article from the Geller Report, but it's right at freedomsphoenix.com. It's like in a top couple. And that makes sense because even like when they were trying to say that Assad in Syria was gassing his own people, they had like news crews and crisis actors all set up there. And there was like, pictures and some videos of like all these bodies on the ground. And then you see there was a feed that somebody had of this where it was like, all right, everybody, you can get back up now. And we're going to, and people just started getting up.
Jay, have you seen the pictures, though? They're like Pulitzer Prize award-winning photos.
Probably green screens involved and studios. And,
I'm being sarcastic.
There really was in Syria, and that was so crazy.
And so that's a similar thing.
I think some of the pictures that they're taking now in Israel, like where people are suddenly cowering down in the city, and it's supposedly coverage like, oh, there's a Hamas rocket that just went off nearby, and then they have a photograph of them. How did they catch that so quickly? And there's a bunch of examples like that. I can't remember them. And these are just the ones that I noticed today because I got a Reuters account and I got onto AP News and I'm getting into this.
It's quite the propaganda machine going on out there. They got to make sure that the images are just right. That they're combing these pictures with fine comb, whatever.
I'm not saying they didn't kill anyone. I'm not saying that because I know, I don't know because I wasn't there, right? But I'm not saying that the initial attack wasn't real. I believe it was real.
Well,
You could say Israel.
either way, it's definitely.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for the call, Tim. It's definitely important to always question things if you weren't there to witness it. And I feel the same way about the Russian conflict and the Israeli one. You shouldn't just assume that because they said it on the news, it's true. But moving on, we have another caller. We have Rob from Vermont. Rob, what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I wanted to share a story about when I went into the system. This was like over 20 years ago. After being in there for about a year, the state created a law where, if you have children that are out there, that child support would be building up while you're behind the prison walls. And if you wanted to, you could petition the courts and then get that to stop, which is, what I did. Took me a couple of years, but I couldn't get out of not paying what had occurred. So by the time I got out, I was, in the hole $8,000-9,000 after I maxed out of the prison. And when I got out, the only thing I knew what to do was to go back to work and get a place to live and find a job, which is what I did. And I, paid my child support, and then I also paid an extra $15 a week so I could get caught up with the, back child support. Well, fast forward 4 years after all of this, I learned that the child support money that I was paying in was not going to my children.
Nope.
And I didn't know this. And boy, if I got behind on child support or if I missed a payment, they were right there on you.
Where was the money going? Did you ever figure that out?
They said that it was going into an account that does not draw any interest, is what I was told.
But who was able to access that money?
I don't know. That's the thing, because when I learned about that the money was not going to where it was supposed to have been going, I contacted the child support office, and they said, "Oh, I don't know. We don't know nothing about it. Just keep paying."
Yeah, this is not unheard of. This is not unusual. I've heard this happen to a lot of people.
And so what I did was I contacted the Attorney General's office, and I told them, I says, I want some answers. Okay, I want to know where that money's going. I says, if not, come the next day, I'm going right to the press. And before the end of the day, somebody had contacted me, and they, learned that the money wasn't going out. And I said, I want a complete audit of what I've paid in. And I got the audit, but I says, well, how much interest did this occur on all this money? And they said, well, it was in an account that doesn't have interest paid into it. It just didn't make any sense to me.
That's weird, but also I'm just confused about so once you got the audit, it didn't explain to you who the money was going to. It's just sitting in the account, untouchable. No one gets to use it, or was it going to the pension of the DCYF people? It wasn't going to the kids it was supposed to go to.
So it wasn't your ex wasn't getting it. Generally, that's what I think would happen. Whoever has custody of the kids is getting this payment.
Right.
Exactly, and I was not on talking terms with my ex-wife at that time after I had got out of the system. But when I had learned that she wasn't getting the money, I was just beside myself. I went homeless trying to straighten this out, because I told him, I said, no, underneath no certain terms was I going to go back to work until you straighten this out. And like I said, I ended up in the shelter because I just wasn't going to give him any more money.
Yeah, there's a lot of men out there, and I've known several of them who, one guy I know in particular, the ex-wife had 4 kids. The first and only one of the 4 kids was his, the second kid, and she was kind of politically connected. And this guy was managing a gas station on a salary. This was like 1998. He's paying child support on 4 kids, so they took the max, which was like 28% of his check. And so he's working like 60 hours a week managing a gas station, and he's, literally bringing home like $130 a week after taxes and child support.
Whoa.
It's like $130 a week. And the reason I know this is it was a relative of mine had given this guy basically a room in his house, sort of free of charge. I mean, the guys had to do a little maintenance around there, but he couldn't afford anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he literally had like $120 a week to his name. And he worked like 60 hours a week. It was basically like
slavery.
Yeah, he would actually, like, I remember he would, like, come work for like my dad, like, whatever hours he had for cash. Like the guy literally had enough money to like pay his car, pay for the gas and maybe his car insurance, and that was it. From his job, because his ex-wife was getting a massive amount of the.
So he was paying for not only his kid, but the other kids, too?
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to add, Rob?
Yeah, I would just like to know, how do I get... Joe, I would like you to follow me on Telegram.
Okay.
So I can reach out to talk to you. Is that okay?
Yeah. How can I find you?
I can get you guys in touch off the air just because I have Rob on Telegram, actually. So thank you for the call,
Yeah.
Rob.
All right, Rob. Take care.
Yeah, there's so much crazy stuff that goes on with family courts. They're not even as good as regular criminal courts.
Well, they're not courts of law. They're not
Yeah.
courts of record. What they are is they are for-profit institutions,
Mhm.
quite literally. And this family law committee, maybe we could put a link to that in the show notes. It's kind of boring, but at about 36 minutes, they start talking about how these judges are just denying evidence left and right.
Mhm.
And this guy, who's a state legislator, I forget his name.
In New Hampshire?
In New Hampshire, yep. This was like from a few days ago, November 9th.
Mhm.
This committee happened. And the state legislature, this guy who's a chair of this committee, he's reading off this report on how there's like all these judges have been, reported by, people for denying evidence.
Mhm.
Like, and a lot of the evidence is like very extreme. And they sort of get into like it totally like is very clear that like the other part, the court should rule the other way. And one of the things they talked about, they didn't really talk exactly about what I'm going to say, but they were talking about how generally the court rules in favor for child support of who is not the breadwinner. Because they want whoever makes the money to pay the child support because they can pay the child support, and like most of the time that is the man. And they didn't say in this committee, but I'm actually going to email this committee chair and be like, hey, are you aware that child support awards, a percentage of them goes into the judicial pension fund? Please look into this. This needs to be part of your investigation. In fact, I wrote that down on a note card today, so when I get home tonight, hopefully I'll actually email the guy that. And anyways, they want to introduce legislation to make it so that these family court judges, and they shouldn't even be called judges because they're not really judges, but these family court, actors that are, on these benches that rubber stamp everything basically that is brought forward to them by the state, who collect from the judicial pension fund, are denying evidence. And that is basically how a judge.
Whole outcome.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how much evidence got thrown out of Ian's case, for example, or the jury wasn't allowed to look at, or they wouldn't take into consideration.
Yeah.
So, what they're trying to do is make a law or statute and operating procedure basically for these family courts, which is kind of controlled by the legislature, but you're going to find it's really controlled by a bunch of lawyers, not the actual legislature. Because it's just a money laundering scheme, like all of it for these pensions, to keep them afloat. But the So so in family court, like more than about half of the court cases, both sides do not have lawyers. So it's usually a husband and a wife getting divorced, or child support, custody kind of things. And most of the time, neither side has a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they want to do is, if someone is in court without a lawyer, they are what they call pro se, or sui juris is what I like to say. They are, and they object to evidence not being entered or evidence being entered. And the judge either approves the objection or denies the objection or allows the evidence. No matter what, the judge needs to make a note of why they either rejected or didn't allow the evidence, or why they allowed the evidence. So there was some counter in this committee, someone who is, in favor of the judges basically running over people, I can tell, who I forget her name, but she says, well, the circuit courts are understaffed, and the family courts are understaffed.
Oh yeah, that's a good reason to railroad people.
Yeah, right.
And,
or just not have the truth be the most important thing in the court of law.
So
it's not a court of law.
Well, that sounds expensive for our pockets.
Sounds like more work.
So well, it is going to be more work, and so she says, and sometimes you can have like a 20-minute hearing, and there's 30 some odd pieces of evidence that are introduced into the hearing, and so the committee guy's like, and. So you're saying somebody's rights should be denied?
Well, we can't have fair and honest court systems.
Yeah, we can't have court going on longer than the judge wants it to go on.
The New Hampshire legislature is getting actually kind of bombarded with affidavits from regular people who are very, very upset with the way that family court's operating, the way DCYF is operating. They're wasting money, constantly wasting money. They are, they cost a ton of money. DCYF has paid out hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements in the past decade. More like one state representative told me, he's doing some investigation into this on his own. He told me the number is more like $300 million in the past decade.
And it doesn't come from DCYF. It comes from the taxpayers.
Right.
A lot of people that work for DCYF don't even have kids themselves, and there's a reason for that.
Right.
And, the state legislator, people can't defend themselves in their kids, right? Because they can't get down there. They have kids.
So like, for example, J.R. Hull, who's didn't even want to be a state representative again, but they sort of forced him to be a state representative again because he was kind of trying to retire from that. He wants to pay attention to his family. They came after him over him giving his kids ivermectin like 2 years ago, and that case cost him over $50,000.
Whoa! To defend himself
in legal fees with the two different. So he had to hire a lawyer for his kid, and he had to hire a lawyer for himself.
Wow!
And it was just constant, like just back and forth, paperwork, 50 G's, and it cost him. Like, and his like tax returns for that year were like, he was telling me were like 60% of that 50,000. He didn't make a lot of money, but that's crazy, and a lot of people just can't afford an attorney, and these guys know it, and they just run them right over.
Well, I'm going to go to the phones and you guys' thoughts. Chuck in Washington, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Well, forgive me for not being on the topic of family stuff, but it occurred to me a couple days ago that this show is really, really awesome when you guys take calls, and all shows do that. Some shows don't do that, but I just enjoy the experience of having the opportunity and listening to calls from all over the place.
Oh yeah, we can keep you on if you have more to say, Chuck, but we always try to take calls. It's just a lot of times people don't call in. So 603-283-6160 if you want to call in. Bring up whatever's on your mind. 603-283-6160.
That's what makes the show, right?
Right. It's Free Talk Live.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost. and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has agreed to a daily 4-hour humanitarian pause in northern Gaza. The White House announced the move on Thursday, saying these pauses would begin immediately. It comes after weeks of fighting, which has left more than 10,000 people dead in Gaza, according to Hamas. Some 1,400 Israelis were killed and more than 200 taken hostage after a terror attack by the militant group on October 7th. Our US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby confirmed there will be no military operations in northern Gaza over the duration of the daily pauses. They will allow assistance to enter the region and provide a window for citizens to get out of harm's way. But the US says a ceasefire is still not on the cards, claiming it would legitimize the October 7th attacks. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire until the hostages are released.
For many nations, these pauses don't go far enough. French President Emmanuel Macron has broken ranks by urging states to strive for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Rebecca Bunden is in Paris.
French President Macron said that the situation in Gaza is getting worse each day. His opening remarks were at the conference called for humanitarian aid for Gaza on the sidelines of the Paris Peace Forum. The conference brought together states, international organisations and NGOs that are active on the ground, with the aim of helping to mobilise aid, as concerns persist about basics including water and medical supplies reaching civilians in Gaza amid the conflict. Notably, representatives from Israel did not attend the event.
Meanwhile, the European Union's pushed back against US and Israeli calls to sanction Hamas. Alex Kadia has more from Brussels.
Sanctioning Hamas is not central to finding a solution to the violence in the Middle East. That is the view expressed by Portugal's foreign minister, echoed by other European diplomats who say getting an EU-wide consensus on sanctions would be too difficult to nail down. US officials have said they want their EU counterparts to move faster against Hamas, and Israel's ambassador to Brussels is also doubling down, saying that the EU's current restrictions aren't being applied and that only new forceful sanctions can plug that gap.
And Germany's leader says he's ashamed and outraged at a recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents. From Berlin, here's Trent Murray.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz addressed members of the Jewish community to mark 85 years since the Night of the Broken Glass, when Nazi forces launched a wave of attacks against Jewish citizens. Almost 240 synagogues were burned, more than 7,000 Jewish-owned businesses destroyed, and 30,000 Jewish men rounded up and placed into concentration camps. He said more work needed to be done to teach young people and immigrant communities about the horrors of the past, as he condemned how anti-Semitism is creeping into conversations about the current conflict in the Middle East.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call. 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. It doesn't matter if it's on topic. 603-283-6160. And in the studio with you tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Joa,
and Jay.
And we were talking about lots of different subjects tonight. We're talking about the conflict in Israel and the conflict in Ukraine. And we were talking about DCYF here in New Hampshire, which is Child Protective Services for New Hampshire, another pyramid scheme, basically. But moving on, we have a story here from Coindesk.com that I've had for a while now, but I wanted to get into it, that says the U.S. Treasury seeks to name crypto mixers as money laundering concern. So it says, under pressure to address reports that Hamas and other terrorist groups are partially funded with crypto, Treasury's FinCEN proposed a rule to categorize mixers as a threat. So do you guys know what crypto mixers are?
I do. Is that where you take crypto and you run it through this mixer and it gives you back the crypto, the same amount, except you've rehashed it, like the code or like the reference is different?
So it makes it not traceable.
So let's say that we each have, $21 bills, and we take them all and we throw them in the middle of the table and mix them all up, and then we each take $21 bills back.
Right. That's what it's doing.
Yep.
So I think that this is pretty bad that FinCEN and the Treasury want to do this, or the U.S. Treasury's FinCEN, I guess they belong to them, want to do this. They're proposing this rule because it's just stupid. Anytime someone wants privacy, it doesn't mean that they are a terrorist.
Well, they're freaking out because the velocity of money has really dropped. So what's happening is people are borrowing money, outside the fiat Federal Reserve system, and one of the ways to borrow money is crypto. So there's all of these like platforms where you can put your crypto, like Pancake Swap is one of them. I had a friend used to talk about that. But so with 8% interest rates, essentially, or the interest rates going up, the people who have crypto to put into these swapping type platforms, they can do it anonymously. You can do it like turn your Bitcoin, for example, into like something else like Monero or some other privacy coin, put it on these exchanges, and then you get paid a pretty like hefty APY, annual percentage rate or whatever. However, and a lot of people are able to do that. In fact, I know of several people who have put up their cryptocurrency to like buy houses, and then they pay it off and they get their crypto back, and cars and all kinds of other things instead of going through like a bank. Regular bank. So what's happening is the velocity of money, the way I understand it, and I'm no financial expert, but what I understand is that's the money sort of injected into the economy, and some of the money created, and where that mostly comes from is loans. So when you get a loan, say for $500,000 for a house, basically, at one time it was like they had to have something like 10% of that money on deposit or 20% of that money, and then they would now basically the banks don't need to have any of this money on deposit. They can just create the money out of thin air. Well, with the interest rates being high, because essentially the U.S. Treasury has to make the interest, they got to put the interest rates up so other countries will buy these Treasury bonds, and nobody wants the Treasury bonds really. I mean, anybody who's paying attention understands that the American empire is so ready to collapse.
So they don't even give you that much when you go to cash in your Treasury bonds compared to something else.
Who wants to give the federal government, their money for 20, 30, 10 years?
Sign me up.
When they can give some kind of exchange on the internet, money for 6 months, 4 years, 5 years, a year, and it's risky. I actually have a friend who 3 years ago, he was like, "Oh, dude, you gotta take your cryptocurrency, and you got this money in crypto, and you should put it in this thing." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing it. I don't want to have to pay attention to that stuff." Yeah. I'm kind of like, I'm just lazy when it comes to that kind of stuff. I got better things to do than like fool around with
trading and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not into any of that.
Neither.
So like, I don't know. A year later, I'm like, hey, that Pancake Swap thing you were telling me, it was something called, I think that's what it was called. He's like, huh? Like, where are you at with that? Because he's like, oh, I'm putting like $5,000 in or something like, or I can't remember the number. He says, he's like, oh yeah. He's like, I missed pulling it out when it was at its highest, and like but when he pulled it out on the way back down, and he made like a couple $100. He didn't lose it, but he says if I had held it for a few more days. But this is a guy like every hour he's like looking at his phone at like what these things are doing, and he's all talking about it. And it just takes a lot of attention. Like you got to pay attention to it. And he did lose some crypto in some of these financial schemes, and I know other people who have lost a lot, and I know some people who have made some like wicked money in these things. So, but what I can tell with the money velocity slowing down it's because what creates money into existence is people getting loans, and that has really slowed down. Wow. And what's been happening for the last few years because of the artificially low interest rates, and I still think 8% is an artificially low interest rate. I mean, an interest rate should be a real interest rate would be there's no entity out there like the Federal Reserve or any of these central banks that create money out of thin air that can just come up with the money because they push a button on a keyboard. That's all they literally do. Well, somebody has to sign a document first, some man or woman, in a form of a loan application. They create this money out of thin air, and then essentially that increases the credit limit of the bank. So I tell people all the time that are using legacy financial systems, every time you write a check, every time you deposit a check, every time you swipe a card, every time you apply for a loan, every time you make some kind of financial transaction that has a digital part to it, whether you deposit cash or withdraw cash,
it's being traced.
You're essentially you're essentially increasing the credit line of the United States corporation, and the United States corporation spends most of their money on killing people on the other side of the world.
And that's why if
in war.
You use dollars, you're using blood money, and if you use cryptocurrency, you're promoting peace.
Or cryptocurrency, barter, silver barter bags, trading in gold backs, but anything that's like regulated by the government and you need to have know your customer, that's all blood money. That's all going to further enslave and make the world worse.
I mean, I hate to break it to y'all, but Bitcoin has become government blood money. Probably. I mean, they own more of it than anybody else.
I don't only talk about Bitcoin when I talk about cryptocurrency, for one thing. And for another thing, it's not like it's as bad as using the US dollar.
Well, what's nice about
I would say it's just as bad, but
it's not just as bad because you're 100% of the time funding wars and everything with the US dollar.
Well, here's the thing: you can't create any more coins than the network allows, and then in 20 years or something, there will be no more Bitcoins being minted, or it'll be like take forever to mint the last couple of Bitcoin, to mine the last few Bitcoins. So it's that programming, that network, and if that changes within the Bitcoin protocol, it would be aware to the people paying attention to the the nodes and the blockchain. I don't know how to do that, but so that's kind of like, and the fact that is I guess if I just like I'll make a point is like if you're using cash, dollar bills in hand, and that's not traceable. I mean, it was traced at one point, but now that it's in your hands, it's not traceable. Whereas, crypto, a lot of crypto, it's traceable. So it's like, I just look at there's still a value over dollar cash, in the sense that crypto is still traceable. Do you get my point?
Yeah, but it's just like you can do things like use these mixers and use Monero. It doesn't have to be traceable, and even if it is, that's not an immoral thing like using the
I'm
dollars.
not saying it is. I'm just saying. I guess. Yeah. No. I guess I was getting at is because
the other thing is
the
not
government
everything
has a lot into it.
Everything you're doing can you use cash to do? Like, sometimes you need to send money to someone across the other side of the globe.
True.
So if I know people that are getting loans and having success for it, and there's like very little red tape, there's no like very little know your customer through these crypto things, and they're utilizing it and they're happy with the service, and they like the idea that they're giving interest to somebody on the other end who actually holds crypto, like an individual or many individuals, depending on where this comes from, and not to the evil banks who literally sponsor and create all the wars. Because all wars are bankers' wars. The purpose and what of the U.S. military and what they've been doing my entire life is enforcing the use of the U.S. dollar as a world currency. The petrodollar. It's the only reason that we're bombing all these countries constantly and all the time is so they,
it's backing the purchasing power.
And so now I can see why the Treasury is freaking out, and all these guys are freaking out. Because the fact that people just aren't borrowing money, people aren't, getting loans, and the thing is like, all these cars are like way overpriced. For example, I mean the pickup truck that I drive, which is 30 years old almost, is like $120,000 or $110,000 if you went and bought it right now. The same exact truck.
That doesn't make any sense.
Is it because people want to get older cars because they don't have
No. I'm just saying if you went and bought a 2024 F350 diesel loaded, all the options, crew cab, 4-wheel drive pickup truck. It's like $114,000.
I expect it to be more money than an older vehicle. Makes sense, but like that much, like it blows it out of proportion. Like, how much was your truck when it first came out? Maybe $15,000-$20,000.
It was like $21,000.
Okay, yeah, like that's crazy that it's gone up a lot. 5 times the amount.
And it actually makes perfect sense. With all the money that's being produced. With all the inflation. Now, if we took the truck, the value of a brand new truck, say for the past 50 years, and we compared it to like silver and gold, I mean that would be an interesting thing. I have it'd take me a few minutes to like calculate all those numbers, but they're kind of like right there, and sort of it. You could probably for the 1997, it'd probably take you could probably buy that truck. The same truck today with the same amount of gold it would take you to come up with it, So I don't know how much $20,000 of gold was in 1997, versus doing the math on that. But, anyways, and just things are getting expensive. So all you got to do is just make food and energy 10% more, and that's a whole lot less money that people have to do things. So we had all this $4 gas. $6 heating oil last winter in New Hampshire. That's crazy. Firewood, $300, $400, $500 a cord for firewood. But it takes a lot of work to make firewood, and to season it. And,
the fuel was up. That's why lumber costs and everything were up last year because of that. I remember.
Well, lumber costs were skyrocketed. So in 2019, lumber costs was way down. And magically, a whole bunch of lumber mills in like 2019 and early 2020, all their stock of lumber that was milled got burnt.
Whoa.
So hundreds of millions of board foot got burnt like within a 6-week period, or basically 2019.
I never heard of that one. I heard of all the like food companies getting burned.
There is there was a documentary I had watched in 2019, and it was just released, and somehow we were looking at YouTube. It was before I had the kids. We had just moved to Henniker, and we were watching some YouTube stuff about Henniker, and we found this thing about lumber mill burnt in Henniker.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And there was 19 lumber mills that burnt basically in the United States and Canada. And when I say lumber mills, these things have
big
billions of board feet of lumber, like just as far as you can see, acres and acres of lumber stacked up 20 foot tall, all over the place, and they had nowhere to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they because lumber is a heck of a renewable resource. I've been growing up in the forests of New England, pretty much my entire life, and I watched lots of clear cut logging, and years later, bam, forests come right back. I've watched selective cut logging, and forest comes right back. And so there's all this stuff everywhere. So what happened is the lumber price crashed hard. It was like down to like $300 per like 1,000 board foot, and like a semi truck is like 5,000 to 6,000 board foot of lumber, depending on whether it's pine or oak or whatever. And then it went way up to like $14,
because of all the fires.
Well, with 2020, so you had the scamdemic, and everybody started working from home. So like all these guys are building decks and they're remodeling their house, and there's a whole bunch of incentive money came. So a whole bunch of people just like, bam, I'm going to do all these house things.
Less people wanna
like
work.
The Home Depot, like money went up, the Lowe's money, all those guys are really down in the dumps right now. They're way down on revenues. Home Depot, Lowe's. The lumber prices have come way down. My local lumber yard, the prices are half of what they were, in the summer of 2020, because a lot of things are backing up because they've really sucked a lot out of the economy with.
I remember prices going up though.
Huh?
Prices on lumber went up.
They went up, and they've come back
really?
down. Yep, they've come way back down. In 2019, I was buying 2x6s for $4.10 a piece, 8-foot 2x6s, because I needed a couple hundred of them for my house. From the local lumber yard, and then they were at like $9.75 in like early 2021. I had to buy a few more. Then, I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago, I had to buy a couple of these 2x6s, and they were at like $5.10.
Wow.
So they're not quite what they were in 2019, but they've come way down.
Wow. And I just think it's crazy because a lot of people just still don't want to work. Like, my sister got 3 jobs in less than a month when she first got here.
Yep.
Well, not all at once, but she got a job, and then she's like, well, I got offered this one, so bye. And then she got a 3rd job. It's just so easy to get a job right now.
Yeah, if you have any ambition and you're not a drug addict, even if you are a drug addict and you have ambition,
Yeah, be the
and
speed
function.
kind of drug addict, and maybe you can get a job.
But no, all you need is just to show up, have a pulse. If you just look at a lot of the people working in convenience stores, and some of the places I go into, I'm just surprised that they even hire some of these guys, but they're just so desperate for help.
Yep. Well, pivoting back to this story about the U.S. Treasury seeking to name crypto mixers as a money laundering concern. I want to know exactly what that means. Like, is it just a thing they're going to say, or does it do anything to maybe criminalize these owners of these mixers, which has already been happening? Like, people have gone to jail.
The U.S. Treasury should look into money laundering going on with Ukraine.
Oh, they don't care.
And
about
now Israel, and the DEA, because they're pushing all the drugs into the country and into the cities, and all the banks that are laundering for the Mexican cartels and the Chinese cartels and the New Hampshire drug cartel.
That's just making that's just making the government get more money. They want to stop anything that could make you be independent of them, like cryptocurrency.
Right. It's all about power, not so much about the wealth. I think it's just about power.
That's the main thing. I always think the same thing.
They keep money from the people that are fighting for freedom, or the average person is the one fighting for freedom. It's going to prevent him or them from expanding.
Taxes, regulations.
And
let's bog them down.
The average person doesn't have that much ambition. Like, they just want to get by. They want to make enough money to do their little things that they like go to Starbucks, go to, they think they're rich because they shop at Whole Foods. And
yes.
Yeah, but they don't care about who gets hurt when they're using their blood money or anything like that. And I know what you mean. The United States government doesn't care that you are upper middle class. They're not. I'm always saying the same thing. That it's more about power, but money does give you power. So if you're really ambitious and you want to make a lot of money, you create this cryptocurrency mixer online. They're going to go after you.
Yeah.
It says the U.S. Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Arm, so FinCEN, is proposing to label crypto mixers as a primary money laundering concern in its effort to combat illicit crypto finance, highlighting the terrorist groups that have benefited from anonymous crypto funds, including possibly Hamas. The Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, issued a notice of proposed rulemaking on Thursday, which they're not elected or anything like that, and they're making rules, and you could still get in trouble in court for breaking these rules, and that's ridiculous. It says on Thursday, which will be open to public comment for 90 days, not that they actually care what you say. Quote, today's action underscores Treasury's commitment to combating the exploitation of convertible virtual currency mixing by a broad range of illicit actors, including state-affiliated cyber actors, cyber criminals, and terrorist groups, unquote, said Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Wally Adeyemo. That's interesting. Adeyemo. That's the last name. In a statement that cited the agency's past actions against Tornado Cash and Blender.io. Those are ones I was thinking of. Those are some mixers that people actually went to prison for creating.
Yeah, I heard that Tornado was used by North Korea. So they were saying that if you ever use Tornado on your crypto wallet, and then you try to go onto an exchange with that crypto, they were denying you access because somehow it was traceable.
Took North Korean money.
Yeah. A lot of people had that problem about
that is scary.
Trying to access their crypto or exchanging it.
I'm going to go to your phone calls and your thoughts, though. We have unscreened caller on the line. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Mark. I'm from Western Pennsylvania.
Oh, hey, Mark. What's on your mind?
Earlier, y'all were talking about Russia. Have you ever heard that Russia outlawed microwave ovens years ago, and is there any health benefits to that? Are they dangerous? Because I use them every day.
I've never heard that. Have you guys ever heard of that?
I mean, I know microwaves are bad if they're not trapped in the machine.
No, I mean about. Have you ever heard of Russia outlawing them? I had never heard that. Oh, you have?
Yep. So there was a newspaper I used to read on Cape Cod Chronicle, it was called. It was kind of like for like 55 and up crowd, senior newspaper. It was a free newspaper, but there was always a lot of stuff in there from Ron Paul and all kinds of things. And there was a really good article about how what microwaves. So microwave actually turns like water molecules, and it vibrates them, at this frequency 2.1, 1.9 gig or whatever. And basically it vibrates it, and those molecules get hot and friction because they move at such a low level. That's what heats them up. And a friend of mine actually just got an RF meter, and he threw the microwave out of the house. Basically within about 15 feet of the microwave, it was basically leaking so much RF that it was at like a dangerous level. Radio frequency. So it measures all kinds of frequencies, this RF thing. And like if you put it like basically within an inch of the phone, it's pretty active. But he runs like a whole bunch of servers. He's got all kinds of computers, and he's trying to set himself up so he's not nuking his body, doing this stuff. So like all his servers are pretty, unless you're like not standing like right up against these computers and don't have your face right against these monitors and stuff, it seemed the RF isn't bad, but the microwave,
basically when you feel heat coming off of it,
the microwave scared him. It was so high. So yeah, so what happens is the microwave actually voids whatever you put in it of nutrition. So like I didn't have a microwave from the time I was about 24, 25 years old in my house. In fact, I had a roommate that brought a microwave into my house and moved in, and then I was like, no, you got to get rid of this thing. And I'm like, well, then you just move out. No microwave. You have to have a microwave. Don't live here. And so we do have a microwave in our house. It's not in our kitchen. And the only thing we use it for, my wife will use it for, is heating up a heat pack. So it might turn on like a couple of times in the wintertime. And in fact, we got these new heat packs that we don't have any. I don't think we've used a microwave actually in a year. In fact, I suggested to her after my friend reminded me about how horrible they are because he got the RF meter. Of just getting rid of it, but it basically hasn't been plugged in, in almost a year. But that microwaved food is void of nutrition, and I will tell you, almost every restaurant microwaves the food a little bit before they bring it to you because when they're preparing it, I don't know, like this is. I've never worked in a commercial kitchen, that kind of commercial kitchen, but fast food. But basically, a lot of people I've talked to worked in fast food says that a lot of stuff is just put in a microwave to get up temperature before it's brought out.
You go to Applebee's, you'll hear them talk amongst themselves, and they'll hear a number. They're like 42, 42, and that's the number of seconds it takes to put that meal in the microwave.
603-283-6160. More coming up on Free Talk Live. Don't go anywhere.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has agreed to a daily 4-hour humanitarian pause in northern Gaza. The White House announced the move on Thursday, saying these pauses would begin immediately. It comes after weeks of fighting, which has left more than 10,000 people dead in Gaza, according to Hamas. Some 1,400 Israelis were killed and more than 200 taken hostage after a terror attack by the militant group on October 7th. Our US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby confirmed there will be no military operations in northern Gaza over the duration of the daily pauses. They will allow assistance to enter the region and provide a window for citizens to get out of harm's way. But the US says a ceasefire is still not on the cards, claiming it would legitimize the October 7th attacks. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire until the hostages are released.
For many nations, these pauses don't go far enough. French President Emmanuel Macron has broken ranks by urging states to strive for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Rebecca Bunden is in Paris.
French President Macron said that the situation in Gaza is getting worse each day. His opening remarks were at the conference called for humanitarian aid for Gaza on the sidelines of the Paris Peace Forum. The conference brought together states, international organisations and NGOs that are active on the ground, with the aim of helping to mobilise aid, as concerns persist about basics including water and medical supplies reaching civilians in Gaza amid the conflict. Notably, representatives from Israel did not attend the event.
Meanwhile, the European Union's pushed back against US and Israeli calls to sanction Hamas. Alex Kadia has more from Brussels.
Sanctioning Hamas is not central to finding a solution to the violence in the Middle East. That is the view expressed by Portugal's foreign minister, echoed by other European diplomats who say getting an EU-wide consensus on sanctions would be too difficult to nail down. US officials have said they want their EU counterparts to move faster against Hamas, and Israel's ambassador to Brussels is also doubling down, saying that the EU's current restrictions aren't being applied and that only new forceful sanctions can plug that gap.
And Germany's leader says he's ashamed and outraged at a recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents. From Berlin, here's Trent Murray.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz addressed members of the Jewish community to mark 85 years since the Night of the Broken Glass, when Nazi forces launched a wave of attacks against Jewish citizens. Almost 240 synagogues were burned, more than 7,000 Jewish-owned businesses destroyed, and 30,000 Jewish men rounded up and placed into concentration camps. He said more work needed to be done to teach young people and immigrant communities about the horrors of the past, as he condemned how anti-Semitism is creeping into conversations about the current conflict in the Middle East.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the latest warning by the United Nations that it is now virtually certain that 2023 will be the world's hottest year on record. It follows the hottest ever October, September, August and July, which may have seen temperatures higher than at any point during the last 120,000 years.
Many of us are deeply surprised about how quickly it's warmed over the last few years.
Mark Maslin is a professor of Earth Systems Science at University College London.
What we're seeing is the result of decades of us putting huge amounts of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We're breaking weather records every single month, it seems. So as we're warming up, we're getting more extreme events. So the quicker we can cut our emissions, the quicker we can move from fossil fuels to sort of renewable energy, clean energy, the better it's going to be for the planet and also for us. We really do suffer both financially and livelihoods from these extreme weather events. So I'm hoping that in Dubai at COP28 in a month's time, perhaps the world leaders can start to accelerate their pledges and we can get to net zero a bit quicker.
That is going to be a very high bar to meet at COP28, which runs from November the 30th until December the 12th. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our top stories again. Israel's agreed to a daily 4-hour humanitarian pause in northern Gaza. The White House announced the move on Thursday, saying these pauses would begin immediately. For many nations, they don't go far enough. French President Emmanuel Macron has broken ranks by urging states to strive for a ceasefire. Meanwhile, the European Union has pushed back against US and Israeli calls to sanction Hamas. That's the latest feature story news. I'm Benji Haya in Washington.
I mean, it's just so hard to believe that it's really all gone.
It was in this living room 3 weeks ago that the Talbot family discovered their DVR had suddenly and inexplicably crashed, deleting more than 5 years' worth of recorded live events and miniseries.
I keep having flashbacks to that day, to that moment when I realized everything was gone.
You know, you hear stories about people who mismanage their device settings, but you never really think it could happen to you. Honestly, it feels like some sort of a dream, like when I wake up, I'll be able to just go downstairs, turn on the TV, and all the episodes will be there again, as if nothing had ever happened.
Friends and family of the Talbots have pledged their support, organizing DVD donations and offering passwords to online streaming services while the family struggles to move on.
We know that we'll never be able to replace all the hours of programming that we had, but I think in the end we'll be just fine, as long as we have our 5 seasons of Seinfeld on DVD.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and you can get in on the conversation with us. You can call 603-283-6160. That is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie,
Joa,
and Jay.
And it's Free Talk Live. You can call in with whatever's on your mind, but we're talking now about FinCEN proposing to make a new rule that you'll have to live by. That
no thanks.
That isn't something that people you elected created. It's just what FinCEN said.
I'm not subject to the jurisdiction of these guys, and they have provided no such evidence that I am, and I've asked them.
But you'll have to say that to the jury, and they're a bunch of idiots, so.
Yes, most of them are.
Anyways, we're reading this article from Coindesk.com that says the U.S. Treasury seeks to name crypto mixers as a money laundering concern. And for those just tuning in, crypto mixers are a site, a service where you can send money, cryptocurrency in and get the same amount back, maybe less a fee, and it won't be as traceable.
Well, nobody knows what your new account number is or reference number to your crypto.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
So
you're starting over. You're fresh. Like when you use Bitcoin, people can see your transactions as long as they have some sort of trace on you. Like if they did a dealing with you, send you crypto Bitcoin, you can see everything that they do on their wallet. Since they sent you a little something.
Unless you're trading a paper wallet or trading Cassashus coins, like you would trade,
right.
Bars of silver or dollar or pieces or, paper dollars. So, that's sort of untraced. But, is there really crypto on that crypto wallet? Can you verify that, on like the paper wallets?
Yeah, I've never used those. Don't know how they work or anything. But I think that most people already go into using crypto knowing that it's pseudonymous. That's
right.
Kind of the point. It's not supposed to be anonymous, and people are like, oh, I had no idea it wasn't anonymous, or at least people who are actually into it.
Can you imagine if
need to use it for this purpose? Because one of the reasons it's good that it's not completely anonymous is you can check yourself. It's trustless. Verify yourself that funds went where they're supposed to go.
Yeah, but crypto this is why I think people getting into it. Look, if you understanding about anonymity and everything like that, and cryptology, you wouldn't have to really worry about this. But crypto implies anonymity.
I don't think it really matters. Like, you take 5 seconds to learn about it before you get into it. Whose fault is it if you don't know that crypto isn't completely anonymous?
Fair enough. Yeah, I think if you're technologically inclined, you'd figure that out.
I don't think
already.
you need to be technologically inclined, though. It just takes like 2 seconds of Googling to figure it out. I feel like you have this like stick up your butt about cryptocurrency right now, and I don't understand why.
Well, what I'm saying is,
why do
like,
you care if some dumb person gets into cryptocurrency, doesn't understand it, and uses it incorrectly?
well,
I do kind of care about that.
I do care about that. Yeah,
because it makes the rest of the crypto world look bad.
So if somebody starts using it and they're like, I thought this was anonymous.
It's kind of like some dumb person getting a gun in his hand and shooting himself by accident, or shooting a little kid by accident.
Well, what can you do about it? All you can do about it is talk about how cryptocurrency is not anonymous in public.
No, well, I mean, what can you do about it is, try to educate people about it.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
And that's what you can do about it. But what I was going to bring up is, one thing the government really dislikes about Bitcoin specifically is that it is totally 100% traceable. And I say they dislike that because who's the guy, Overstock.com, Patrick Byrne.
Mhm.
So he's been working on this thing like that would, basically be like a blockchain technology for all securities and exchange transactions and trading. So it was totally transparent.
Mm-hmm.
But can you imagine if all of like the municipal corporations, so all the cities, towns, states, federal, all these municipal corporations had to use a blockchain technology to do all their transactions and everything? So it would be really easy to figure out how much of your land taxes, go to pay the pension benefits.
Your
for
exact
example.
Bitcoin that you paid it with.
Well, I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin, but let's say it was a blockchain technology. And also, like, voting should be a blockchain, a decentralized, sort of federated, blockchain technology also, if it was going to be actual real digital voting.
They don't even want it to be free and open source software at all. They want you to be voting with something that you can't get into and figure out what happened to your vote.
They're like just opposites. Like, they don't want this to be traced, and they want this to be traced.
Right. Mm-hmm. They want anything that involves you spending money to be traced, but not their own cities. And I think it's also funny that cities sometimes they'll get hit by stupid scams. I'm not like really making fun of anybody for getting hit by a scam. It's like, it sucks if you get hit by a scam, but then they will go buy crypto just to pay off their scam and send a bunch of people's tax dollars to some scammer.
So I have often thought about, so Ian was telling me a couple years ago about some local town, one of these little towns.
Yeah.
They had gotten their data or something, they had hacked them.
Right.
And they were holding something hostage, like a computer or something. And they wanted like X amount of Bitcoin. And I don't know if they called Ian to buy some Bitcoin. And Ian's like, what do you want it for? And they were like, oh, we're getting, blah, blah, blah. And but I remember Ian was saying something to the fact, like, are you really, is this like stuff even worth this much money, first off? Like whatever they were holding hostage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they just declined to even have anything to do with the hacker. But let's say you work for a government or a major corporation. You could be literally right there behind a computer or from your device, the hacker that made its way in because you sort of have access and demand some kind of payment in cryptocurrency. I think a lot of these like hacks where they demand money is total inside job, first off, whatever.
It's likely.
I think it's very likely.
In every cyber attack, it's like there's just no way to know who's actually behind it. There's like, I think you brought this up before. There's not going to be like, there's no way to get an image of the guy sitting on his computer and who's doing this. And that's how I feel about all of the victims in Ian's case, quote unquote victims, because they're not Ian's victims, but they're scam victims. How are we going through with Ian giving them any kind of quote unquote restitution when we have no idea where they sent this money to? For all we know, they control the cryptocurrencies that they sent the money to. They control the cryptocurrency wallets that they sent the money to. There was never any part of...
I believe. I believe the feds are the ones setting this all up.
Right.
And look, these ransom attacks with crypto ransom attacks, there's no doubt a lot of this has been perpetrated by the government, and I feel like they're just like, hey, we need to randomly attack someone, and like this is how they do it. Like, let's just hit them with a crypt.
Remind the people why they need us. That's what they're constantly doing.
Yeah, but like, oh, this guy is becoming profitable right now. Let's cyber attack his company and get him to buy some crypto and send it to us. It just makes sense why they would do this, and like, I don't know,
And even when it's their own systems, like a lot of times there's these cyber attacks on like government quote unquote internet infrastructure, and you're supposed to be scared.
It's justifying them spend more money.
Yeah, it's just for all we know, they send money to the ransom holder who's actually the government holding this cryptocurrency wallet that they send it to, and then the taxpayers pay them back for it, and then they have double the amount of money.
Yeah, go ahead.
The cyber attack stuff is the perfect like plausible deniability situation, and so if you look at like large corporations that have thousands of employees, and if you look at like government, all these government agencies have massive amounts of employees. I think the federal government is one of the largest like single employers in the nation, and it should be the smallest, but it shouldn't even exist as far as I'm concerned. And then all the contractors that work in it. But so if we know that 3 to 5% of the population are actual sociopaths and or psychopaths, that's sort of some numbers that have been spit out there. So if you have a company that has 1,000 people in it, you can bet that 30 to 50 of them are quite likely going to be these sociopath types or psychopath types, or you have a government agency that has 1,000 people in it, and we know that people who lust for power, prefer government jobs because they come with the qualified immunity and all this stuff. But there is just all of it. So it is quite likely that somebody in the companies or that works in these governments can like kind of understand how things work and would even know where to like, all right, we know that this data is worth $1 million or $20 million. So they would be happy to give us $5 million to get it back, for example, or even $1 million or even $500,000 in some form of cryptocurrency. And then, Bitcoin, and they can even be using cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin to, to facilitate these transactions and purposely doing it so they can say, look at Bitcoin's being used to, commit these
for nefarious reasons.
Right.
And funding
scams.
Terrorists.
Yep.
Right.
Hamas, who totally has nothing to do with us. We totally don't give them weapons or instructions or anything like that.
None of us do, but the Biden regime does.
No, that's what I was saying.
And,
I was trying to beat them. Sorry. So they're like, oh, Hamas, we totally don't have anything to do with them. They're using cryptocurrency, so now it makes cryptocurrency look bad.
And it just makes me think about FTX and scam, bankster, fraud. That's what they come up the other night on the show.
I hadn't thought of scam, and I thought it was a good one. I always think of Sam like Uncle Sam.
Yeah, Uncle Scam.
Yeah, bankster, fraud. Yeah, I think that he was totally an actor or, just somebody taking orders.
I just feel like because he was using his business, whatever, to fund Ukrainians, just
politicians, a whole bunch
terrorism.
of Democrat politicians.
Yeah, Democrat politicians. Like, that is yet to come out. Like, I'm actually curious his sentencing is coming up, I think.
No, he already got sentenced.
And he got sentenced. He got found guilty,
convicted, but not sentenced.
Yeah, I think they said next year is when they're gonna.
Well, the reason for that is because if he got convicted on some, I think 7 charges, then they were gonna bring out some more charges. But if he got found, not guilty on those, then they were gonna leave those other ones dropped. So that's why his sentencing is pushed back like a long time.
I had seen somewhere in freedomsphoenix.com one of the articles guy was basically talking about there was allegedly some list of essentially politicians that got all kinds of money from Alameda Research or FTX or basically Sam Bankman-Fried. Right. And it was like, so you guys going to give this money back? Is the Biden campaign going to give back all the money they got from them? Pelosi got money from a whole bunch of the crooked.
Are they going to have to help pay the people back that lost their money.
Yeah, well, these politicians are like very flush with money, and they could have, there should be no problem with them returning stolen money.
Right.
And so it'd be interesting if, the people who actually lost money in the FTX scam, any of them are going to get any money back? Are any of these assets going to be sold that these guys own? But the bondholders get it all first. Whatever comes out when something collapses. Not the actual people who invested or whatever.
And they also used Scam Bankman-Fried's thing to help the jury decide to convict Ian. I'm 100% sure. The judge randomly, without anybody bringing him up right before the jury left one day during the trial, the judge was like, just so you know, when you guys go home and you see on the news there is this story about this guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, who just got arrested, just so you know, just keep in mind that just because it has to do with cryptocurrency, it has nothing to do with Ian Freeman. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with the words he's saying, but why even bring that up?
It's like telling your kid not to, pick up the stick and don't pick up the stick and hit your brother.
Right.
The kid didn't even care about the stick until you mentioned not to use it to hit the brother, and he wasn't even thinking about hitting his brother. But,
might be really fun.
This is what happens with
but
kids.
But don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and scam, bankster, fraud. Sorry, it doesn't roll off the tongue that easily. He's like the best example or the worst example that the government could bring up, and just by mentioning him is definitely creating that bias in the case for Ian.
Right, and I don't think Ian's terrible lawyer even objected to that. So it's nothing we can do about it. But I just believe that it has something to do with why they convicted him.
Yeah, I know so many people who have just put faith in these lawyers, and they've got themselves screwed. The lawyers are about keeping people in the box.
People in our own community would talk about this lawyer like, oh, he's the best. He's really good.
Yeah, right. The fact that he's a lawyer means he's no good.
Right.
Right then and there.
Well, moving back on to this CoinDesk.com article, it says, FinCEN said that mixing services, which seek to allow users to conduct transactions with anonymity, are used by, quote, a variety of illicit actors throughout the world, referring by name to Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which I guess is North Korea. The agency said this proposed rule is a key part of the ongoing effort to boost transparency in the crypto markets. Which to me, it's like, it doesn't belong to you guys. It should just be up to the people who use it.
Yeah.
It doesn't belong to any state. It should be up to the people who use it.
Aliens could come down tomorrow and start using it.
Right.
They don't even have to come down. They just got to make a communication.
That's a good point.
They didn't have to be here. They could do it from the moon.
And
send me crypto, aliens.
Does that make them suddenly under the jurisdiction of the United States of America? No. I think that's... in fact, that would be a great thing to happen if aliens were on the moon and connected with Earth, and the United States and other governments started trying to say, oh, they're under our jurisdiction because they're using cryptocurrency. It would just be so obvious to people, finally, that it makes no sense that they're under your jurisdiction.
We're aliens on the moon.
Yeah.
So what needs to happen is people need to ask for the evidence that subjects me to the jurisdiction of the United States. Just quite simply. I mean, did Ian's lawyer ever once request the evidence that they rely on, that the United States corporation, this entity calling itself United States, is...
I mean, they did put a flag on the moon.
Is a holder in due course of some kind of instrument that Ian, agreed to. Yeah, this is why... And lawyers won't ask that question because they'll get disbarred. They will not challenge... the lawyers cannot protect you. They cannot protect your rights. They can only represent you and help feed you to the furnace of the state.
Yep. And going on, it says the Treasury Department and the wider administration of President Joe Biden have been under pressure from U.S. lawmakers to do something about the use of crypto to support terrorism, especially in light of reports that Hamas received some crypto donations in advance of its attack this month in Israel. And I'm pretty sure that's like 100%. The one from Massachusetts.
Elizabeth Warren,
yeah.
the millionth Indian.
Yeah,
millionth
1
of an
million.
Indian. She's diabolically evil, that Elizabeth Warren. And when it says U.S. lawmakers are being pressured, so I bet you if we took these U.S. lawmakers and saw who their lobbyists are that give them money, it's going to be banks.
That's such a good point.
Sure. So it's finance. So whoever these U.S. lawmakers are, guys like Lindsey Graham and Pelosi, the scumbags, the evil people who are funded by Wall Street and the financial institution, and essentially the Federal Reserve, controls all these, Wall Street and financial institutions. The lawmakers, it's the lobbyists who control the lawmakers, not the actual people.
Yep.
In New Hampshire, I think that the lawmakers, some of them are controlled by the people, but not most of them.
It says FinCEN Director Andrea Gacki noted that this is her agency's first ever use of its power to target so-called primary money laundering concerns on a whole class of transactions. If the designation is made, the Treasury Department can impose restrictions on U.S. financial firms' dealings with the mixers, which range from requiring additional due diligence and special attention concerning particular account transactions among U.S. financial institutions to prohibiting the opening or maintenance of any correspondent or payable through accounts. I'm not sure what all that means. After the comment period, the agency will have to review that input before it can advance a final rule. I'm pretty sure they don't care at all what the public says. They have to review it. Oh, okay. That doesn't mean that they have to prove that they actually were listening and use the input or anything like that. Earlier this week, the Treasury also announced sanctions against individuals and entities tied to Hamas, including a Gaza-based business accused of being a Bitcoin conduit for terrorists. And that's pretty scary. And that's all we have here. It's actually funny. Oh, wow. I scroll down. And another article, it says, read more. Another article from CoinDesk, it says, U.S. Senator Warren leads lawmakers to push administration on crypto-backed terrorism. So I was 100%
She doesn't even
right.
understand the terminology. So I was listening to her, and I don't remember exactly right now what it was, but she was saying the wrong words to describe crypto.
That's
She's
how the
basically
judge was.
a Manchurian
And he is.
candidate, like most of these guys are. She's being programmed. She's being told what to do. If she was a dude, I would say she's probably got some videos of her doing unspeakable things with children.
You don't know what parts she has.
But just who in their right mind, supports the policies and the ideology of Elizabeth Warren. And like another guy, I heard a clip from Eminem, for example. Eminem's like, oh yeah, Joe Biden's awesome, all this, and this was recent. I'm like, really? You're gonna say a pedophile's good and you support him and stuff? So
And what actually
did
good has
Eminem
he
go to
done?
Epstein's Island?
Probably.
Is there a video of him doing some stuff? Because there has to be some really dark dirt on you that they have, and they're willing, if you're going to actually support someone support these kind of things. And who are Elizabeth Warren's financial backers? Who are the lobbyists that give to Elizabeth Warren?
Big Pharma, I believe.
The other thing about it is
Pharma and the banks on Wall Street.
I think that a lot of people are just that stupid. Like Taylor Swift, I don't even get vibes like, oh, she might have done some Epstein Island stuff, and now that's why she made cookies that save Biden 2024 on them. No, I think that Taylor Swift is just incredibly stupid.
Well, so the thing is, if she's aware that her popularity is basically is controlled by the algorithm, and then the algorithm's like, okay, you have to do this. And remember, the algorithm can disguise itself as anybody, unless the algorithm and AI are interchangeable, as far as I'm concerned. So Taylor Swift is obviously co-opted if she's supporting the Biden administration.
Yeah. I mean, I know Taylor Swift is co-opted because I'm a pop music connoisseur and her pop music sucks, but she's the most popular artist in the world right now. So obviously it's just like you're saying, the algorithm tells people you like Taylor Swift. So then they go to her show. It's just like mind control.
Rock the vote for Taylor Swift.
And they couldn't even get people to come see Beyonce and Jay-Z to go to a Joe Biden concert where they played to support them. They couldn't get a picture of a very big crowd for even some of the top artists of
But
all time.
Swift could really
Exactly,
make a
she
dent.
probably could. Only because the algorithm. She's not actually good.
The simplistically repetitive pop music that's been being pushed for decades is part of what has been dumbing down America.
603-283-6160. What do you think about that? It's Free Talk Live. You can call in with your opinions. More coming up.
No, it's not your imagination. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Same cost, smaller package. How rampant is this now? Merriam-Webster's dictionary has added the word shrinkflation. Official definition, the practice of reducing a product's amount or volume per unit while continuing to offer it at the same price. That cereal box is thinner. Fewer chips, more air in that bag. Fewer pills in the bottle. Shop smart for brands you want the way you shop around for the cheapest gasoline. Price per gallon is posted right there on the sign, and you'll find unit price, possibly in smaller print, right next to the item price in the supermarket. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks on the blog at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Benji Haya. Israel has agreed to a daily 4-hour humanitarian pause in northern Gaza. The White House announced the move on Thursday, saying these pauses would begin immediately. It comes after weeks of fighting, which has left more than 10,000 people dead in Gaza, according to Hamas. Some 1,400 Israelis were killed and more than 200 taken hostage after a terror attack by the militant group on October 7th. Our US correspondent Sally Patterson reports.
White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby confirmed there will be no military operations in northern Gaza over the duration of the daily pauses. They will allow assistance to enter the region and provide a window for citizens to get out of harm's way. But the US says a ceasefire is still not on the cards, claiming it would legitimize the October 7th attacks. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no ceasefire until the hostages are released.
For many nations, these pauses don't go far enough. French President Emmanuel Macron has broken ranks by urging states to strive for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Rebecca Bunden is in Paris.
French President Macron said that the situation in Gaza is getting worse each day. His opening remarks were at the conference called for humanitarian aid for Gaza on the sidelines of the Paris Peace Forum. The conference brought together states, international organisations and NGOs that are active on the ground, with the aim of helping to mobilise aid, as concerns persist about basics including water and medical supplies reaching civilians in Gaza amid the conflict. Notably, representatives from Israel did not attend the event.
Meanwhile, the European Union's pushed back against US and Israeli calls to sanction Hamas. Alex Kadia has more from Brussels.
Sanctioning Hamas is not central to finding a solution to the violence in the Middle East. That is the view expressed by Portugal's foreign minister, echoed by other European diplomats who say getting an EU-wide consensus on sanctions would be too difficult to nail down. US officials have said they want their EU counterparts to move faster against Hamas, and Israel's ambassador to Brussels is also doubling down, saying that the EU's current restrictions aren't being applied and that only new forceful sanctions can plug that gap.
And Germany's leader says he's ashamed and outraged at a recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents. From Berlin, here's Trent Murray.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz addressed members of the Jewish community to mark 85 years since the Night of the Broken Glass, when Nazi forces launched a wave of attacks against Jewish citizens. Almost 240 synagogues were burned, more than 7,000 Jewish-owned businesses destroyed, and 30,000 Jewish men rounded up and placed into concentration camps. He said more work needed to be done to teach young people and immigrant communities about the horrors of the past, as he condemned how anti-Semitism is creeping into conversations about the current conflict in the Middle East.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. It's talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 is the phone number for you to call in and get in on the conversation this last segment. 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's me, Bonnie.
Joa.
And Jay.
And before we get to the phones, I did want to let Jay go ahead and give his announcement about Anarchapulco.
So Anarchapulco is happening. I got an email a couple days ago, said that they have confirmed with the hotel and the other part of the venue that like it's going to happen. They have crews working on getting it cleaned up because of the hurricane that came through there.
A rainless hurricane.
Yeah, or there's some people are saying a big tornado. Anyways, one of the best things that that can be done to support the Anarchapulco is just go down there and spend money, or Acapulco, I mean. And one of the ways you can do that is by going to Anarchapulco, which is February 11th through 18th, 2024. I will be presenting my part of my lecture series of investing in our posterity. There'll be a whole bunch of other speakers. It's going to go on. I mean, there's like the speaker list is pretty big. There's going to be a lot of activities to do. There's like a whole Anarchapulco or something right after Anarchapulco if you want to hang out down there longer. I plan on being down there for at least 2 weeks, me and my family. But if you go to anarchapulco.com and you go to the ticket section and you use the coupon code J, that's JAY, you'll get a 10% discount.
Nice.
And it's going to be a good time. Check out anarchapulco.com.
Going to your phone calls and thoughts, I believe this is Tony in Oklahoma. Is that who we were talking to?
Yes.
What's on your mind tonight?
Jay, I think it was Jay, and you guys were talking about a lawyer that won like 13 cases, but he didn't pass the bar one night. And
That
I was
wasn't
wondering
me.
if Jay... Okay, sorry, somebody was, and I didn't know you were talking about lawyers there, Jay, and I was wondering if you heard that they are trying to pass something to where you do not have to go through the bar exam now. You have to be like a mentor. You get a mentor, and then I get so many hours in, and then you become a lawyer. I didn't know if you heard anything about that either. I'm a truck driver, so it's hard for me to read everything and hear everything.
Sure. Well, and thank you for your service as a truck driver. I put on a lot of miles in my day hauling horses and hay and cattle, and definitely you are way more valuable than any lawyer or politician. You're actually more valuable than all of them put together, as far as I'm concerned, because you provide a service that we all need. Thank you. So I can tell you that my father represented himself, defended himself, really, not represented himself, in federal court back in the late 80s. He was facing 15 years in prison for assisting a felony, aiding and abetting a felony flea prosecution. My grandmother actually had the same charges brought against her. She was convicted. She had an attorney. My dad and a couple of his legal friends, as he referred to them, wrote my grandmother's appeal, and 30 days later she was out of jail. And this is where and the thing is, my father was interviewing attorneys and lawyers, and these guys. So the thing is, when you go to interview an attorney and talk to them, they want you to sign some document saying that you're not going to basically go talk to any other lawyer and you're not going to get a second opinion. This is like going to a doctor. Like if you ever interviewed an attorney, they're like, yeah, well, we're not going to talk to you about this unless you sign this, some kind of crap. Because I talked to a few attorneys about, I was just wanting to hire someone who was an attorney or a lawyer as legal counsel, not as a representative, not as a representer. And none of them were interested in doing that. I'm like, well, you make $300 an hour. I can't hire you. And, for, say, I'm like, I'll hire you for a whole day. You want to do an 8-hour day or you want to do a 6-hour day? I'll pay you $300 an hour. Help me go over some paperwork with me. Kind of, give me some ideas of what I got to do. Tell me where I'm wrong. And they're just totally not interested. They're like, nope, it's like 10 grand. It's 15 grand. And the lawyers can just do that. They can just, because they have all the work they want, because they all create controversies and they provide work for each other. So when my father presented his case and he wrote the appeal for my grandmother and he won his case in court, he was actually admitted into the the Massachusetts Bar Association, not as a bar member, but as someone who was sort of allowed to do these kind of like lawyer things not as a lawyer.
Wow.
Over basically
assisted counsel.
Well, so we all have a right to assistance of counsel at our election.
Mm-hmm.
The Bill of Rights does not say anything about lawyers or attorneys, and lawyers and attorneys existed, but the people who wrote those documents were very fed up with the actions of lawyers and attorneys. Lawyers and attorneys are basically the ones that are responsible for most of the problems that we have. Like, for example, one of the things that is happening with the New Hampshire legislature is New Hampshire is this state where there can be no 50-50 custody of children in separations or divorces. One party has to have like custody and the other one pays child support. And the reason that for 25 years now, I was at a New Hampshire Liberty Alliance summit a few months ago, and they were talking about this. For 25 years, they've been trying to get this 50-50 custody. So a lot of parents are like, okay, hey, we're agreeing to not be together anymore, and we'll just split the kids 50-50. And New Hampshire's like, no, you can't do that.
Crazy. I
Family
heard
court.
that.
Wow.
So this is also another reason not to get a marriage license, not to get the state involved in your affairs. But there are women who, I know a couple that got married at PorcFest, right? And they were like, oh, yeah, we're not going to get a marriage license. We're not going to do this. In fact, Daryl Perry married them at PorcFest. This is like 15 years ago. And and as they were getting a divorce and getting separated, the wife starts, trying to run this stuff all into probate court and get the state involved.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, and trying to use the state as leverage. Now, that never really happened. The husband kind of gave in and just, complied with all the demands of the wife. And I was like, dude, you don't have to do that crap. Because there's no contract. You're not, there wasn't no contract getting the government involved, and she can't get the government involved. It's between you and her. So anyways, just keep that in mind. They'll still, they can still try to bring the government in. So what happens is the reason there's no 50-50 custody is because there's this lawyer that is like on this committee that keeps on like derailing this entire thing. So I said to these state representatives,
you say 50-50, nope, lawyer, they take a third.
Yeah. So this lawyer trying to derail the 50-50 custody thing is the same guy. He's a lawyer. And I said, oh, is he a lawyer for the state? Yes, he is. He works for the state. I says, oh, does he pay into, is he a contributor to, and will he collect from the judicial pension fund? And they're like, I think so. And nobody had really the exact answer to that. But if you work as a lawyer for the state and you work as a member of the judicial branch of the state, you work in that particular judiciary, it is quite likely you're going to collect from the judicial pension fund and you pay into it. Well, so I explained to these guys, I go, well, you're aware that whoever the child support thing is whoever, when they award child support, and there is no award for child support in a 50-50 situation because it's just, it's split. You're taking 50% responsibility. And so this guy knows that their pension funds get a massive injection. 66% is what I'm told by.
And like wherever else it goes, according to Rob, they won't even tell you where it goes sometimes.
Right? Yeah, they won't even tell you where it goes. But so this money that is injected into the pension fund comes out of the Social Security fund. So if a guy like Rob's ordered to pay $100 a week in child support, for example, $66 of that child support doesn't go into the pension fund. The federal government actually kicks in the $66 that goes towards the pension fund. But what's the amount of money in New Hampshire? Like, it would be interesting that is being paid in child support. Well, 2/3 of that is is getting injected to the judicial pension fund. And the judicial pension fund is definitely going to be lawyers, prosecutors, clerks, secretaries in these courthouses. Is it going to be the bailiffs in the courthouses? Is it going to be, the staff, the janitor, all these people? And I'm sure even to become a janitor in a courthouse, you get it because you're connected. Just like all the other cushy state jobs.
Oh, for sure.
And so you work there.
So right. So that's the only way you get those kind of jobs. The only way you get a job at the toll booth on the Massachusetts Turnpike or the New York Thruway is because you're politically connected, or working for the state DOT or the county DOT. Actually, now you can get jobs working for this New Hampshire DOT because they're so desperate for help. Because a lot of young people who actually have work ethic and ability want to go work for a construction company, and a lot of them don't want to work for the state because the state's so horrible.
And they also don't pay very well. Honestly.
They don't pay well compared to the equivalent job you get working in a construction company. You are correct.
That's why I think New Hampshire is going to eventually fail and collapse, because I've noticed, like, even like secretaries in the sheriff's department here in Keene, in Cheshire County, they are the sheriffs are having their wives work as secretaries. So I'm like, I mean, it's conflict of interest, but I'm not surprised because, like, you know, they're going to get away with things probably.
Yeah, and I'm sure the sheriffs have, you know, a executive pension fund that they collect into, the police, the governor, and there's I don't know if there's a legislative pension fund, or I'm sure the legislature hires some people to do some stuff. I know the legislatures just get, like, the legislative officers.
They don't
in New
get
Hampshire,
much.
They get $100 a year, so there's no pension fund there. I doubt, but. If there's a judicial pension fund, I'm sure there's an executive one and a legislative one, and there are people that work in the state house year round doing legislative type things.
You're on
that
the
have,
governor's
like, you know,
board or whatever it is,
or whatever, you know, unelected people. But yeah, so Jeff Younger, if anybody wants to research this, if you would do the internet search, Jeff Younger, Timcast, child support. There's a clip of him. He was on Timcast show explaining this federal money that's pushed into the judicial pension fund in every single state. And that's actually something that I need to like to hire someone to actively look into that in New Hampshire. I don't really know how to, like, find out all that information, but yeah, there's a massive conflict of interest with Family Court and DCYF and all of this stuff with
Freedom
judicial, with the judicial pension fund. In fact, in my wife's case, where she's charged with child endangerment, their witness is a career in the government. She 20 years in the Merrimack County Prosecutor's Office, one of their witnesses, and the prosecutor collects from the pension fund. I'm sure this secretary
the witness probably does
in the pension fund, and the judge is all part of the same pension fund, and the judge and the prosecutor are the same employees union,
and they all
called
get
the Bar Association.
They all get more money in their pension fund if your wife gets convicted of this. That's crazy.
Well, possibly. I haven't quite figured. I think that might happen. I don't know where that particular money goes, but the fact that they are all in the same pension fund means that there's no way that judge can be impartial. There's no way that prosecutor can be impartial. Yep. And the fact that the prosecutor, for example, gets, the only way he can go up this ladder, let's say the corporate ladder, is by getting convictions.
Yeah.
And they essentially want to get convictions against people like my wife, because I am very much active in talking bad about these guys and exposing these guys. And if you go on my YouTube video, you can see some YouTube channel, J Noon. You can see some videos that I've put up of these social workers and explaining the DCYF situation and what's going on. And now we're going forward with an affidavit process to where we got the legislature. Leah Cushman is doing a really good job. There's a nice clip of her out there on YouTube. I don't actually know how you'd even find it off the top of my head, where she is explaining to the legislature, your job is to follow the Constitution and protect the rights of the people. And as we know, everything but that is essentially happening on these government levels in every single governmental, municipal corporation, whatever you want to call it, all across the board. They are not protecting people's rights. They are harvesting the people's energy, stealing from them, extorting them, all these things constantly. Yes, they are textbook definition of parasites, all government employees.
And they don't give back to their communities, like someone like a truck driver like Tony. So, Tony, is that all you had for us tonight?
Yep, that was it. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your call.
Yeah, but government officials will say that they also pay for their own salaries. They also pay for taxes. So you're saying they're like they're sucking their own blood at times?
Getting high off their own belly button lint is more how I would explain that. And when I say parasites, I mean, I will tell you that, like, the state highway guys that are in, like, my area, they work for New Hampshire DOT, like the guys who plow the road and stuff. Like, I've talked to a whole bunch of them, and they're like pretty all right dudes.
Yeah.
But they're not like young. They're definitely not woke. Any of them, they're like real men. And the thing is like, yeah, they are in a position of a parasite because of who they're working for, but they're the kind of people that even like our own chief of police, like I really don't like to call him a parasite, even though he gets this money that's stolen, as part of his job. But he's like, he's like a good, family guy, and
they would be doing good regardless of the state existing or not.
So as soon as the state collapses, like if the state collapsed tomorrow, I'm going to be like, all right, I'm going to say to the local cops, this is how much you guys want to, sort of protect me and my neighbors, because they're already equipped, they have the training, they have the knowledge, and because they're not woke and they're not like, they don't have this agenda. They're just family people.
What do they say? We'll be there in about 10 minutes.
Well, I don't know what they'd say.
If you were actually, if their paycheck depended on how well they protected Jay and his family.
Right. But I was saying when it collapses, if the financial system falls apart and there's no way to tax the slaves, because right now they control the financial system. When they don't control it, when the financial system collapses, and now we have things like cryptocurrency, for example, that we can do real life transactions with anybody. So we and all of us people have been using cryptocurrency and the alternative currencies, trading and bartering, using the silver and the gold backs. We've been practicing. We're going to be fine when the financial system takes a major dump, because we're still going to be able to trade with our neighbors, and we've been doing that stuff. If you've been taking or swiping a card and going to Walmart, you're going to be in a lot of trouble when that card doesn't work and Walmart's not able to function because the financial system collapsed. But those guys who plow the road, for example, they're valuable because they have a skill and they're willing to plow. It takes.
They'll do it regardless of the state existence.
Right? Because I would, and they'll do it, and it'll be so much cheaper because if the people are just going to voluntarily pay them because they start up their own, they're just individuals and they're going to plow, and we're going to hire them, and it would be cheaper because right now the state has to maintain a standing army of police officers and military type people, military personnel, military weapons, and courts and judges and bailiffs and sheriffs and deputies and constables and all of these people to make sure all the slaves pay their taxes. That is super expensive to maintain an army. And even the standing and the founding fathers are, were very much against maintaining standing armies. And that's what your local police, your state police, your sheriffs, they're essentially a standing army that's going to, show up at your door if you just don't pay the taxes. Yep. And they got all kinds of guns.
How do you know that's true, Jay? How do you know that they'll show up at your door if you don't pay property taxes?
It happened to me about 10 years ago.
Yep.
6:30 in the morning, they're knocking on the door, and there's 25 cops out there.
Whoa.
And they're like...
Wait, they knocked on your door?
They knocked on the door 6:30 in the morning.
That's nice.
Yep.
Yeah,
they didn't just kick it in. They're like, hey, Jay, we're here to evict you, kick you out of your house.
Wow.
And I'm like, I object in the strongest possible way. And they're like, yeah, we know, we're sorry, but we got this court document, and, there's a judgment against it, for the house and tax lien taking, blah, blah, blah. And come to find out, tax lien takings, best I can tell, they only apply to commercial industrial properties, not homes.
So have you looked into doing anything like suing that town for doing something incorrect to you, or it's just not worth it?
I did sue them.
Oh.
And it was just promptly thrown out, federal court. And in Massachusetts, from what with land court, there is no way you can get a jury trial. There's no jury trial for a tax lien taking in Massachusetts.
Okay.
But they're not actually taking property. They're just taking the title to the real estate. And the deed to your property, if you guys look at your deeds, the word real estate's not on there anywhere. And if you look like Bear Arms talks about, these towns and municipalities, when it comes to the property tax stuff, they don't use the term house. They don't even define a house. And the Constitution says, the Bill of Rights say in the U.S. and all the states that you are to be secure in your in papers, effects, and house. You're to be secure in your house. So how can they tax something that you have a right to be secure in? Well, they don't even define a house. They have like tenement house, boarding house, greenhouse. They got all these definitions, but not definition of house. So, but one of the next things we're going to work on is basically we're going to do a public records request to the local tax assessor to ask them for the process and procedure that they rely on for a tax lien, for a tax taking lien, is I believe how they word it. And I've read some of that, but I want to see what they give me, what they're using. But what I can tell is it all has to do with industrial, commercial type properties, which require what's called a business situs, which means that they asked government for permission. They got some kind of license to operate a business, and that's what gave them the right to put the taxes on. But the problem is everybody started paying property tax on their homes in 1939 in this country. There was no, like this house here, previous 1939, I guarantee there was no property tax paid on it. And then in 1939, after the Erie versus Tompkin Railroad case, what had happened in Palmer, Massachusetts, Thorndike, Massachusetts, and Bondsville, Massachusetts, because I researched deeds in these particular towns, is one real estate company or law firm or lawyer owned every single property in town except for like the mill and like, you know, the big like factories and stuff. They weren't part of this, but all the homes were granted to these lawyers for 2 days. So in the archives down at the bottom of Hampden County Registry of Deeds, down in the basement, there was these archive books, and they have what's called grantor and grantee indexes. So my house in Bondsville, Mass. was owned by Joseph Fury Esquire for 2 days. And then there was a date was like December 10th, 1939. And then it was granted to Joseph Fury Esquire from Joseph O'Connor or whatever the guy's name was. And then it was granted back to from the lawyer to the original homeowner 2 days later. And when I asked these guys at the deeds hall about this, I'm like, well, what is this? They're like, oh, that's a lien. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Can I see the lien? Yeah, sure, you can see the lien. We're gonna have to dig it out of archives. Well, it's just a mortgage, is all they said, probably just some kind of lien. And what had happened, best I can tell, is all of these properties were basically collateralized for the bankruptcy of the United States Corporation, and everybody's paying essentially this bankruptcy debt with the property taxes. But when the property taxes first came out, they sold it as though you're going to get all this stuff. And there was property taxes, but only on real estate. And real estate is defined in Black's Law Dictionary as basically commercial, industrial, agricultural type property. And not like a little farm, but like these big, corporate farms. And those were ones who were supposed to, pay the taxes, like the mills, the ones that were making all kinds of production, the ones that were putting the wear and tear on the infrastructure, and the trucking companies and, things like that. So that all changed in 1939. And basically I was escorted out of the Hampden County Registry of Deeds on my appointment date when I was supposed to look at these liens. So that's actually one thing I'm going to do in Merrimack County is I'm going to go into the registry. Why? Because they just did not want me looking into this.
Whoa, that's crazy.
But this was 15 years ago, and I wasn't in New Hampshire. Now what I can do is I could go into the Registry of Deeds with Joa, and Joa being part of the media, or even you, or even Ian when he gets back pretty soon. Hopefully he'll be back by the time I'm doing that, because he would probably love to come investigate this with me and record these guys being like, oh, and I'm sure we're going to find this in the in researching the deeds back. But if anybody wants to go research the deeds back on their property, especially if you're east of the Mississippi River, 1939, you're going to see that some law firm, some lawyer, or some real estate company owned the property for a couple of days, and then you take that name of that entity and you look into grantor index or grantee index, and you're going to start seeing just pages and pages of these guys, like thousands of transactions they did, and nobody can tell me why or what, and there was no reference.
I mean, just the logic, it just isn't there. I don't understand why anyone, I don't care what laws are on the books or whatever, the logic of it's theft, it's stealing.
Yep.
I don't get it. Why they have to make it so twisted to just take.
And back then when they were doing it, it was, maybe 10 hours of labor a year to pay your property taxes. I got, I know so many people that are paying $20,000 a year in property taxes.
Yep.
How many burgers do you got to flip at your, $15 an hour job to pay that kind of property tax?
A lot.
Impossible.
And how much percentage of them taking your money is not slavery or theft anyway? freetalklive.com is where you can go to hear more from us. Sorry if you didn't get on tonight. You can call back on Saturday. It's Free Talk Live. Peace.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if